Aloha nui kako. Nui ko mahalo ia o ko whakahia pāma ke ia hui ana no ke ako ana. O ke ka nui ko mahalo ia o ko pao no ke ako ana no kako no ko pono ko la hui no ko pono ka aina no ko pono ko vai. E he o lalo no e au e kalale ana ana o ko ke mahina no ka mea o ke ka mahina o lalo Hawaii. No laila he olelo no iao no ke la. I ka olelo no ke ola, I ka olelo no ka make. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this month's Board of Water Supply board meeting. I gave a little bit different olelo no iao today because it is Hawaiian Language Month. The month of February is dedicated to Hawaiian language. So the olelo no iao today is I ka olelo no ke ola, I ka olelo no ka make. In language, there is life, and in language, there is death. Before beginning today's meeting, I'd like to state that our board is dedicated to providing safe, dependable, and affordable supply of water now and into the future. At this time, we'd like to share a brief recording with reminders on public participation, as well as virtual meeting regulations for board members as required by law.
Materials for this meeting under HRS Section 92-7.5 are accessible at boardofwatersupply.com/board meetings. The public may attend this meeting in person at the BWS Public Service Building, located at 630 South Beretania Street. The public may also view a live stream of today's meeting on our website at boardofwatersupply.com/live. We have been accepting written or oral testimony for today's meeting. Instructions and an online submittal form are available at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. The deadline to submit advanced written testimony has passed. Testimony received by noon today have been distributed to the board members. We will continue to accept written testimony today through our online form. Oral testimony in person or remotely will be accepted during today's meeting. To facilitate as much in-person and remote testimony as reasonably possible during the time allotted, pre-registration and submittal of a written version of testimony at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony is strongly encouraged. To testify in person, please register using our online form or come to the Public Service Building at 630 South Beretania Street. We have a representative in the lobby to provide intake and further instructions. To request to testify remotely, please complete the online form at boardofwatersupply.com/testimony. Requesters will receive an email containing links and instructions to join the Zoom session. Testifiers will have 2 minutes to state their position. A timekeeper will alert testifiers when there is 1 minute remaining. Once the 2 minutes are up, please summarize to allow time for questions from the board. Then, make room for the next testifier. Board members attending any board meeting remotely must be visible to the public to be considered present and meet quorum guidelines. Board members participating remotely must also disclose their location and anyone present at their location during roll call. Meeting participants who are calling or video conferencing in, please mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you have a question, comment, or wish to enter or second a motion on an action item, please unmute your microphone and identify yourself before continuing to speak. If you encounter technical issues during today's meeting, please use the Zoom chat to send a direct message to our support team. Their names are listed in the message to all participants. To open the chat window, please click on the text bubble icon on the Zoom toolbar.
Let's take a moment to take a roll call of the board members. When I call your name, please say aye. And if attending remotely, make the appropriate disclosures. Vice Chair Kapospro.
Hi, apologies, I lost my cursor for a moment. I am attending remotely from my home office and where I have the door closed and I'm alone. Mahalo.
Aloha Kapua. Thank you. Board member Brian Andaya.
Aloha. This is Brian Andaya. I am attending remotely from my office and I'm alone.
Aloha, Brian. Thank you. Joining us in person in the boardroom today is board member Jonathan Kaneshiro. Board members Edwin Sniffen and Jiva Albano are both absent today due to schedule conflicts. Also in the room with us today are manager Ernie Lau.
Aloha.
Deputy manager Erwin Kawata. Aloha. Board secretary Joy Cruz Achu.
Here.
Aloha. Managing Secretary Kim Kawai, and Information Specialist Stephen Nordstrom and Wayne Maria. Here. Aloha. Joining us by Zoom are Jeff Lau and Yost, both from the City and County Corp Council. Moving on to action items today, we have 5 items on our action agenda. Item number 1, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held on January 22nd, 2024. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve. So, okay, moved by John.
Second, this is
Okay,
Brian.
thank you, Brian. And seconded by Brian. Are there any corrections, additions, amendments, or discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, thank you. Please note for the record. Moving on to item number 2, introduction of resolution number 979, 2024, providing for acquisition of water pipeline easement by eminent domain over an unnamed private roadway off Booth Road, situated at Pauoa Valley, Honolulu, Oahu, tax map key 2-2-056-070, excuse me. Chair recognizes Michael Matsuo. Aloha.
Aloha and good afternoon, Chair and board members.
Good afternoon.
Again, my name is Mike Matsuo. I'm the Land Administrator for the Water Supply Land Division. Here today recommending the introduction of Resolution 979-2024 for the acquisition of water pipeline easement for an unnamed road off Booth Road by eminent domain. Oh, by the way, before I start, I have Roselle Agag from the Department of Corporation Counsel here. She has been advising me on the resolution itself. So if need to, she'll pop on in.
Aloha. Thanks for coming.
Today, we are recommending the board introduce a resolution that does the following. It makes known that the Board of Water Supply intends to acquire an easement by eminent domain, and it also authorizes and empowers the Corp Council of the City and County of Honolulu to initiate proceedings in eminent domain. The easement is for water pipeline purposes over, under, and through an unnamed road off Booth Road, as you can see there outlined in red. It's located in Pauoa Valley and identified as tax map key 2-2-056, parcel 70. The parcels outlined in blue are those parcels that have an interest in the road itself. According to section 7-105E of the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu, it does authorize the Board of Water Supply to acquire real property and real property interests, such as easements, in the name of the city by various means, including eminent domain. Eminent domain proceedings are being contemplated because we have been unable to negotiate a grant of the water pipeline easement with the owners who have an interest in the unnamed road. And this resolution will allow the Corporation Council to negotiate terms of settlement with the owners, subject to your approval and also the approval of the Corp. The easement is required for a new 8-inch water line that was installed along this unnamed road. You can see here on this image, the water line. It's an 8-inch water line that comes in from Booth Road and goes all the way to the end of the road. The new 8-inch water line is part of the recently completed Pacific Heights Water Systems Improvement Project. This project involved constructing 12-inch, 8-inch, 6-inch, and 4-inch mains and fire hydrants along various roads in Pacific Heights, as you can see there. And one of those roads was that unnamed road, which is identified there. Because the unnamed road is privately owned, we need to acquire an easement so we can legally access the new 8-inch main for operation and maintenance purposes. And we will be asking for an easement over the entire width and length of the road itself, including the cul-de-sac area at the end there. The 7 owners of the property who have interest are listed here. Brittany Tilton, Thomas and Karen Shigeta, Albert and Minnie Ewan, Brandon Hiroshige, Karen Hamada, Frank Lum, and Robert and Jocelyn Wisemantle. So they all have 1/6 interest. Mr. Lum and the Wisemantles, they share a property. So together they have 1/6 interest in the road itself. So this is a chronology of the events that this has gone on for us to acquire the easements from these people. Back in February of 2015, we sent letters to the owners requesting a consent of entry so that we could conduct geotechnical surveys for the water pipeline replacement, which is part of the design process. The consent of entries did include language that indicated that once the new water line was installed, the owners would grant a pipeline easement to Board of Water Supply, and all the owners did sign that consent of entry. Then in 2022, With the completion of the new water line, we sent letters to the owners again by certified mail. We returned receipt requesting they sign the grant of water pipeline easement. In February of 2023, we received one of the easements grants back from the Shigetas. On May of 2023, we went to actually visit the owners personally. Unfortunately, we found none of the owners at home, so we left copies of the grant where they could be easily seen. In July of 2023, we made another visit. 3 were not home. The 4th was sick, and we did speak to Mr. Shigeta, who recommended visiting on weekdays after 5, as most people would be home by then. Mr. Shigeta also claimed that the others may be reluctant to sign the grant of easement because there is a notary requirement. All grants need to be notarized before they can be recorded at the Bureau of Conveyances. A few days later, we made another visit. This time we were able to talk to Mr. Hiroshige, who said he would sign the grant, and he recommended coming back on a Sunday to see Ms. Harada. So then a few days later, we went again. Ms. Harada and Ms. Tilton were not home, but we did speak to Mr. Ewan, who said his granddaughter handles all his affairs. We tried to talk to his granddaughter, but she refused to speak to us. And so he said, Mr. Ewan said he will ask her to call Board of Water Supply, which she never did. A few days later, we did receive the grant from Ms. Harada. And by the end of January, end of 2023, since we received grants from only 2 of the 7 owners and no responses from Tilton and an unwillingness of the Ewan granddaughter to contact us, we decided to acquire the easement via eminent domain. So acquisition by eminent domain process. So it all starts with the introduction of a resolution that authorizes the acquisition by eminent domain. This starts the whole process. We will be sending letters to the owners to let them know that we introduced the resolution and our intent is to acquire an easement by eminent domain. If none of the owners or anyone else with an interest in the unnamed road that we're unaware of, they don't intervene, then we'll be asking the board to adopt the resolution at a subsequent meeting. Before we adopt the resolution at a meeting, we need to put a legal notice in the paper at least 3 days before. Once the resolution is adopted by the board, we will prepare a memorandum to Corporation Counsel, asking them to begin the necessary actions to begin the condemnation process. As you can see there, it now becomes a court case. Corporation Counsel will represent the Board of Water Supply in circuit court on the acquisition of the pipeline easement by eminent domain. And if the court should rule in our favor, a final order of condemnation will be issued and provided to Board of Water Supply, and we will notify you of this order of condemnation. And that's it in my presentation. Let me read you the resolution. So Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, resolution number 979-2024, providing for acquisition of water pipeline easement by eminent domain over an unnamed private roadway off Booth Road, situate at Hau'o Valley, Honolulu, Oahu, Hawaii, tax map key 2-2-5056, parcel 70. Be it resolved by the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, 1, that for public use and purposes to wit, the installation, maintenance, operation, replacement, and removal of an 8-inch water line and appurtenances to replace an existing water line that has experienced breaks and to improve water service and fire protection for the subject unnamed road, otherwise known as a roadway lot, more particularly described in Exhibit A attached to the resolution and shown in Exhibit B attached to the resolution. Proceedings in eminent domain are provided by the law, be instituted for the acquisition of an easement for water pipeline purposes over, under, and across the entire width and length of the roadway lot, together with the right of ingress to and egress from the roadway lot, and that the Corporation Counsel of the City and County of Honolulu will be and is hereby authorized and empowered to institute said proceedings. The acquisition of the foregoing easement by eminent domain is necessary for the aforesaid public use and purposes. That in the process of said proceedings in eminent domain, the said Corporation Counsel be and is hereby authorized and empowered to negotiate terms of a settlement subject to the approval of the Board of Water Supply and or the court before which the such proceedings are commenced. Introduced this day, February 26th, by Na'alehu Anthony, Chair, Board of Water Supply. I'm ready to answer any questions.
Members, any questions? Before I see your hand up.
Aloha, thanks so much, Mike, for that update. I was wondering whether, and I know I understand it's been difficult to communicate with the community members, but by taking this to court, it's gonna become a lot more expensive for them. They're gonna have to retain, I mean, unless they are gonna represent themselves, they likely would have to retain counsel and that sort of thing. And so I was wondering whether any effort was made to notify them of that, including, even if it's just, sending certified letters or even dropping off letters at their home or stopping by. So just wondering whether they have been apprised of that.
We definitely could do that. We definitely could do that.
Yeah, if they tell us that they are willing to sign and we can avoid this whole process, then we're fine with that too.
That would be great. And I understand the need to have it notarized, but perhaps even for folks who are willing to sign, if we could take a notary to their home, that might even facilitate things.
Right. We'll look into the possibility of having a mobile notary come out with us to help them out with that. I'm just a little concerned with the ones that don't respond to us at all, or the UN granddaughter who refuses to speak to us. I'm not really sure, even if we were to go the route or with the recommendations you provided, that we'll still get a grant of easement, but we can still be hopeful.
Yeah, I understand. And I'm happy to vote today to authorize that, but I'd appreciate it. I know it'll take a little bit of time to get going. And so if in the interim, we can make one last and extra effort to try to reach out to them, let them know, that would be great. And if she still doesn't respond, then, so be it. But at least we'll have known we've, gone above and beyond to try to avoid this.
Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. Mike, thanks for doing this. And yeah, I'm with Kapua on this. I think we should definitely make an effort to contact them yet again. And I think we should be very, very clear the consequences if, they don't get back to us, which is basically taking them to court and exercising our eminent domain powers. So I am all on board with that. Is there any compensation that's being contemplated in this, I guess, action?
In this instance, roadways usually have no value. So there's really no compensation other than the symbolic $1.
I see. So the roadway is a private roadway then?
Correct. But typically, even though it's a private roadway, it really has no value.
I see. Okay.
So we've put the 8-inch pipe in already.
Yes, correct.
What's the mechanism to do that? Do you need the same permission set?
The consent of entry was made such that we could go and put the pipe in itself, which is typically how we do things. We'll get a consent of entry for them first to do whatever due diligence we need to do, and also for construction itself.
Okay.
So once that's done, then we approach the owner about getting a grant of easement.
Okay, and the easement is so that we can service it and.
Right. Because it's a private road, without the easement, we have no legal right to go in there and to do anything in case, say the pipe breaks or something else breaks, a valve breaks, we can't go in without an easement.
Got it.
However, that's not to say they won't let us in, because, that's, for them, that's a bad
I think
thing.
it's also very, very clear. This is the last resort that we have, exhausting all previous efforts to try to ask them to voluntarily, agree. Because the water line improvements are actually for the benefit of this community in this area. JD, did it include a fire hydrant too?
Yes, it did. At the end of the line.
So it improved fire protection from
Okay.
the cul-de-sac
Okay.
area. So we don't use eminent domain very often. It's probably been a long time since we've done it, but it's our option of last resort.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I'm trying to understand why this is a private unnamed road. Is like, would this have been one full property back in the day that one family kind of occupied and then it split over
Yeah,
time and they had to figure out how to.
it was submitted as what they call a condominium property regime, where instead of actually subdividing the property, they made like little individual condominium units. And so then they have to put the roadway in to provide access.
Got it. And I guess the last question I have is would there be a set of circumstances where you would bring water right to the edge of the private road and say, okay, well, this is your guys' condominium and now we're entering onto your property and you guys are responsible past here? Or did the fire hydrant trigger something more robust?
I'm not quite sure the answer to that. JD?
That legal ramification.
It could be that there was already a pipeline in there, so it was a matter of replacing the pipeline that's already breaking. We could, put the meter at the property line and then say, you're responsible inside, but In this case, I think since the water line was already there, that was already ours.
And we did get a consent of entry.
Yeah.
To actually do the work. So,
Got it.
I think also they were notified that we need an easement ultimately.
Yeah, it's part of the consent of entry language, and they all signed the consent of entry, so they knew going in.
Okay. John?
The consent of entry was not paired with the easement.
Excuse me?
The consent of entry was not paired with obtaining the easement
No.
at the point.
No.
So it's a matter of just getting a notary to sign the easement from the.
Yes, that's correct.
And is it an acquisition of the fee, the roadway itself, or is it an acquisition of an easement underlining the?
No, it's an acquisition of an easement over the road itself.
They still.
So we're not gonna accept ownership of the roadway.
Right. So they still maintain ownership.
Correct.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
So
Okay, so John, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second Skapua.
Okay, thank you, Kapua. It's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion, corrections or additions? Okay, hearing none. Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Capozzo,
Aye.
Board Member Brian Ataya,
Aye.
Board Member Jonathan Kanashiro,
I
and Chair Nalek Anthony.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 4 ayes.
Okay, thank you. Please note for the record. And yeah, Mike, if we can get one last set of letters to go out to those guys, I think Vice Chair has a good point. We're just, we want to make this as easy as possible for folks, just to make sure we can maintain water quality.
Wholeheartedly agree.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mike.
Moving on to item number 3, introduction of resolution number 980/2024, providing for acquisition of drainage and flowage easement by eminent domain over a portion of land situated at Macau, Ko'olauloa, Hawaii tax map key 5-3-007016. Chair recognizes Michael Matsuo.
Aloha again,
Aloha.
Chair and members. So this is my second resolution today. We are recommending the introduction of resolution number 980/2024 for the acquisition of a drainage and flowage easement. For the acquisition of a drainage and flowage easement by eminent domain proceedings over and across a property in Punaluu Valley. The easement is owned by 4 individuals that I will go over in the presentation. And acquisition upon publication and subsequent adoption by this board will enable the Corporation Council to initiate eminent domain proceedings on behalf of the board. Again, this is a drainage and flowage easement for Punaluu Wells 3 by eminent domain. Again, we are recommending the board introduce a resolution that does the following: makes known that we're intending to acquire this easement through eminent domain and authorizes and empowers the Corporation Council to initiate proceedings in eminent domain. The easement is for drainage and flowage purposes over, under, and through the property located at 53-320 Punaluu Valley Road and is identified as tax map key 5-3-0007, parcel 16, which is highlighted in red on the map. It is adjacent to our Punaluu Wells 3 property. Again, section 7-105E of the revised city charter does allow us to acquire the easement in the name of the city by various means, including eminent domain. Again, these proceedings are being contemplated because we have been unable to negotiate a grant with the current owners, and the resolution will allow the Corporation Council to negotiate the terms of settlement with the owners, subject to the approval of this board and the court. The easement is required for the access road repair and drainage improvements project for Punaluu Wells 3. Punaluu Wells 3 is highlighted in red on the according figure. Runoff from the site and down along the gravel access road is shown in the blue arrows. It is unpaved access road and is currently located in what's called Easement 6, which was granted to the Board of Wasply in 1976 for road and pipeline purposes. And it does pass through 53-320 Punaluu Valley Road. The project is being implemented to prevent gravel, debris, and runoff from the well site and the access road from running toward Ko'olau Road during heavy rains. The project will involve grading and repairing damaged portions of the roadbed, and of course paving the access road with asphalt, and constructing what we call swales or grass-lined V-shaped drainage ditches on both sides of the access road. This figure shows the extent of the access road to be modified. And on this cross section, you can see the 2-foot swales on either side of the road. So because of the new swales will be located on 53-3, one of the new swales, only one of the swales will be in there on 53-320 Punun Valley Road. We need an easement for drainage and flowage purposes. So you can see there, blue is easement 6, which we already have. Excuse me. Red is the easement we need for the swale. This figure shows the new drainage and flowage easement F1, which was surveyed by Control Point. Has an area of 1,281 square feet and is alongside easement 6. The 4 owners of the 53320 Punaluu Valley Road are Karen Tracy and Debbie J. Keolanui and Merrill Martin. They all have 1/3 interest in the property itself. So this is a chronology of events that we went through to acquire the drainage and flowage easement. So in April of 2020, we sent letters asking that they grant us this easement. And we also sent the grant document for them to sign. They came back in September of that year saying that they wanted compensation. So instead, so what we did then is we hired ACM consultants to prepare an appraisal in April of 2021. And ACM consultants appraised the value of the drainage and flowage easement at $4,183. Following that, we sent letters in July of 21 to the owners with this offer for the easement. And we went through a couple months where we didn't get any responses back. We spoke with one of the owners in October, and she said that one of the other owners, they're all cousins, by the way, was suffering a medical condition, and they were not able to collectively discuss our offer. So we called them again in December, and still no decision on our offer yet. And she did ask, well, what happens if they don't decide to go for it? And we said, well, we will acquire through an alternate means. We did not say specifically eminent domain, but we did say alternate means. In February of 23, I had mistakenly thought they accepted our offer, so we began the process of subdividing and creating the easement. But a few months later, I found out, no, that had not been the case. And actually, the owner that I had been speaking with had, in the meantime, conveyed her interest in the property over to one of the other owners. So we sent letters again in September of 2023 and gave them a deadline of the end of October 2023 to respond, or we would acquire the easement through alternate means. By the end of October of 2023, none of them had responded. In fact, only one of them received our letter. The 2 others that we sent letters to were returned to us as undeliverable. So again, this is the process. Today's the introduction is the start of the process. We will send letters again to the owners, like with the unnamed road of Booth Road, to let them know one more time that this is going to occur and that it could, there are ramifications. If none of the owners intervene, we will recommend to the board the adoption of this resolution at another meeting. And prior to that meeting, 3 days prior, we will make sure that there's a legal notice published in the local newspaper. Once the resolution is adopted by the board, we will prepare a memorandum to Corporation Council asking them to initiate the proceedings. They'll take whatever actions are necessary. Corporation Council will represent us in circuit court. And then if the court should rule in the favor of Board of Water Supply, they will issue a final order of condemnation, and we will notify you that the order of condemnation has been approved. So let me read you the resolution. So Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu, resolution number 980-2024, providing for acquisition of drainage and flowage easement by eminent domain over a portion of land situated at Macau, Ko'olauloa, Oahu, Hawaii, tax map key 5-3-007, parcel 16, be resolved by the Board of Water Supply, City and County of Honolulu. 1, that for public use and purposes, to wit, the installation, maintenance, operation, replacement, and removal of a 2-foot wide V-shaped drainage ditch or swale to capture runoff from the Board of Water Supply Punaluu Wells 3 site and access road and prevent gravel and other debris from flowing to the old 40-foot railroad right-of-way known as Ko'olau Road during heavy rains. Proceedings in eminent domain as provided by the law be instituted for the acquisition of easement F1 as described in Exhibit A and shown in Exhibit B for drainage and flowage purposes from Boardwalk side Puno well sites. 3, an access road as shown as water system facility site and easement 6 on Exhibit B. And by this reference incorporated herein, over and across easement F1 over a portion of land Commission Award 8164-E upon a 1 to Kamali'i, including the right of ingress to and egress from easement F1 over easement 6, and that the Corporation Council of the City and County of Honolulu be and is hereby authorized and empowered to institute said proceedings. The acquisition of the foregoing easement by eminent domain is necessary for the aforesaid public use and purposes. 2, that in the process of said proceedings in eminent domain, said Corporation Council be and is hereby authorized and empowered to negotiate terms of a settlement subject to the approval of the Board of Water Supply and or the court before which such proceedings are commenced. Introduced by, on this date, February 26, 2024, Na'alehu Anthony, Chair.
Thank you, Michael. Any discussion?
So
Chair
I think in
recognizes.
this case, again, yeah, just maybe communicating in very clear terms. I mean, alternate means versus legal eminent domain condemnation. A little bit different in tone, but yeah, just more communication, to the landowners regarding our intentions to do that. Is what I would request.
We'll do the same as we will with the owners for the unenrolled locals rooms.
Kapua?
Thank you for that, Mike. I was wondering whether the owners live on the property. And looking at the photo, I can't tell. It looks like there may be houses, but I wasn't sure. Do you know?
No, they're actually, Ms. Martin lives in Texas.
Oh,
Ms. Lindsay lives on Hawaii Island. Only Tracy and Debbie J live here, but they don't live on the property.
okay. And so what we're talking about really is a 2-foot swell, right? Just on one side of the
yeah.
property.
Well, 2-foot swell within a 4-foot easement because we have to, when we
Right.
grade and stuff, it goes a little bit harder.
Sure. Okay. And so, I know that I understand the complications and appreciate the efforts that you have already made outreach. I know typically when there are issues around, condemnation or eminent domain around properties, notice can also be posted on the property itself. And so perhaps if we're having difficulty, getting in touch with the landowners, even if they don't respond, if we post a notice or the letter on the property, their tenants might convey the message to them, because at least they'll have the information. Because at least, I mean, I agree with Board Member Andaya, for $4,000, if that's what the appraised value is, they're gonna spend way more money in that trying to hire an attorney, and especially if they're not in Hawaii. The difficulty of responding to and appearing in an action like this, will be a significant burden on them. And I understand that this is kind of where we are and what's needed, but my request again is to just, even though we recognize you folks have done a lot, if we can continue to go the extra mile, and explain to them, because as Board Member Andaya pointed out, alternate means is different than explaining very clearly that if we don't get a response for them, we will be forced to have to pursue eminent domain, which will mean instituting legal action against them, and they'll have to respond in court and likely hire an attorney to represent them. That might inspire a little bit more response, and hopefully, because we haven't received any indication that the amount isn't sufficient, right? It's just that they haven't responded.
Yeah, we can't even deliver letters to them because we tried to deliver them. We do certified mail return receipt, but either no one's home or we can't get it to them, or they refuse to receive it.
Right. So perhaps posting on the property will help. I mean, that's the only other thing that I can think of, and that's something that's recognized in a court of law. If you're taking action with respect to a property, that's recognized as what can be done. So,
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry for all of this.
No, thank you for the suggestions and recommendations.
It's a good suggestion. We'll post something on the property or near the property, so that they clearly can see it, or their tenant can see it if they're a tenant. Yeah. This is something, again, we take it very seriously. We don't want to exercise this, but we have to be able to move forward with our projects. It's a difficult decision, but thank you.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. And have we already tried to get better contact information for the tenant, or ask the tenants to forward the information?
Yeah, I've been trying to get in touch with that other owner who I talked to in the beginning. to see if I could get something from her. I haven't had much luck in getting in touch with her. I've been checking some other websites to see if I can get some alternative addresses for the owners, but so far nothing.
But we'll try again. We'll try again.
Yeah.
We'll try again.
Thank you so much.
I'll continue to contact the owner I was talking with initially. She seemed to be the most receptive of the four, so.
Right, and at least perhaps if she understands, even, that if her cousins don't do something, then, they're actually gonna end up in court. Hopefully that will inspire them to respond.
Mm.
But thank you so much, you folks, for being open to
Sure.
our suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
I have a question that I feel like it's a very basic question, but I feel like I should ask. Have they, as a board, kind of looked at any other design for the roadway to not have to do eminent domain and move it over a couple of feet?
I defer that to the.
No. Not at this time. I mean, we can look at that as an option.
Well, just curious, because you don't have to go through this whole process and you can design a roadway to be able to do drainage without having to do that.
But the cost might be more than,
You do the design.
yeah. But like if we were to move the road over a few feet,
Well, I don't know if moving it over,
yeah,
but.
The only way to fit it within the actual easement, I think, would be to make the road less
Yeah.
wide, and that maybe not such a good idea
I
to
just
do
feel like I
that.
had to ask, just.
the road is only 12 feet wide.
And so with the swell is only 2 feet, but it's within a 4-foot shoulder area, so in order to push it into the easement, we'd have to make the road like 8 feet wide or something.
Yeah, probably creates a whole other problem.
Yeah,
Yeah. Getting equipment up that road might be difficult.
And this whole process is solving for the fact that it rains so much in Honolulu and that road washes out and
Yeah.
just becomes treacherous for equipment to get in and out.
correct, because since it's not paved right now, it's all gravel, so it degrades because of the heavy rains, and it all ends up at Palau Road
Yeah.
further down. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, but thank you for the suggestion.
Vice Chair.
I have another follow-up based on Jonathan's excellent suggestion. So is the property on the other side, I see it's going to the wall site. Is the field on the other side a different owner?
I would have to check, but I believe so.
Okay, because I'm just wondering too, if perhaps the owner on the other side is more receptive, we could, instead of shrinking the size of the road, just move it over slightly. I mean, I understand that would entail surveying costs and all other stuff. So I don't know, just a suggestion, because it seems like a tremendous amount of effort for,
It's probably more than the $4,000 we would pay to the
Oh.
owners, so.
Kapoor,
Yeah.
let us make another real hard, aggressive attempt to reach out to the owners, and to let them know, that, like, board member Diana pointed out, when you go through a legal process, there's more expense to the owners of the property, and we can avoid that by simply just signing the easement, and we'll pay them the appraised value for the easement.
Oh, and the 4,000 would be split among all 4 owners, yeah, it wouldn't be per person.
Right.
It's just basically 4,000.
Or right, or 3 now, right, if one transferred their interest.
Yeah, well, 2 are married, yeah, so 3,
Oh.
yeah, correct.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Second,
Okay, thank you, Brian. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any other corrections, additions, amendments, or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Capostro,
Aye.
Board Member Brian Antaya,
aye.
Board Member Jonathan Conachero,
Aye.
and Chair Malek Anthony.
Aye.
Chair, motion passes with 4 ayes.
Thank you. Please note for the record. Michael, thank you for your time
Thank you very
today.
much.
And if you guys could just put a couple of do-outs and follow up with those folks before we go through this arduous process. But we appreciate all the effort and want to acknowledge the amount of time that it's taken to get all the way to here. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, take care.
Okay, moving on to Action item number 4, adoption of resolution number 981, 2024, authorizing up to $85 million in principal amount of series 2024 bonds. Chair recognizes Kaliko Lumkey.
Kaliko is our acting waterworks controller. Thank you, Kaliko.
Aloha, Board Chair and members. We recommend the adoption and approval of resolution number 981, 2024, which authorizes and approves the issuance by the Board of Water Supply at one time of not to exceed 85 million principal amount of revenue bonds. The purposes for which the Series 2024 bonds are being issued are: 1, to pay the cost of improvements authorized in the capital budget of the board; 2, to pay the cost of issuance of the Series 2024 bonds; and 3, to fund a trust fund to provide for refunding and redemption of all or a portion of the board's water system revenue bonds, Series 2014A, the board's water system revenue bonds, Series 2014B, and or the board's water system revenue bonds, Series 2020B. The bond shall be on terms and conditions as the board determined to be necessary and advisable. With that, I'm open for any questions or on this resolution.
Any discussion? A couple questions just for the sake of clarity here. So, and aloha, thank you for coming in today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do you have a sense of these 3 different buckets that 85 million would be placed into, like what the split might be?
Yeah, so currently the 85 million is actually the not to exceed or the up to amount. Currently, the new money is about 49 million. This is par value. And then the current refunding, we're looking at the 2014A and 2014B for 24.6 million. So in totality, we're looking at about 73.6. So this resolution has a little buffer or cushion to get up to the 85 million. And with the refunding, just to note, this will result in cost savings for Board of Water Supply customers as well. Basically going to be saving on debt service.
Okay. Curious, your predecessor left us in really good shape with AAA ratings, but the market's been down. Do you have a sense of where the interest rate may be? The range?
I think right now, I think in total, the all-in TIC, true interest cost, is about 4.19%. That could change. That's the latest that the underwriters had provided to us as of last week. So that's what we're looking at right now. I think cash flow savings on the refundings, we're looking at a little bit more than $1 million.
So savings to our customers are interest costs.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
What was the 2014 and 2020?
The 2014 A and B, those are the ones that we're targeting for the current refunding. Again, I think those ones would be for the revenue bonds just to pay for the board's CIP projects.
Well, we can look back and see what the interest rates, if those were sold at.
Yeah, just curious.
Because of the refunding opportunity, by refunding at a lower, probably is a higher rate. And because we can refund now potentially at a lower rate, it's like refinancing your home mortgage from 5% to 4% or something.
Yeah.
That'll actually create a net savings for our customers over the term of the bond. And so that's what we look for. We've been going to market to sell revenue bonds, which is another way to help fund our capital program. And it's been for the last, I think, 3 years, going on 4 years. Just to let the board know, maybe about we did do rating agency presentations last week, or the week before. I kind of lost track. So Kaliko, maybe you can inform the board what our rating was.
Like I already mentioned, we did do the rating agency presentation, and we also gave them a tour on February 14th. So the preliminary indication from both S&P and Fitch is they were gonna affirm our AAA rating.
And the importance of the AAA rating is that we can, when we go to market with these revenue bonds to finance our capital program, we can sell them at better, more competitive rates.
Sure.
That actually creates a savings to our customers over time.
We're better risk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I appreciate the leadership of the board.
Yep, no, I appreciate everybody's hard work. We're one of the only, if not the only, AAA in the county system.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah, that's a big deal. Thank you guys for all that work.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, if not, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve. Okay, thank you, John. Any seconds? One more time, Kapua. Then I'm-
Sorry, I'll second.
Thank you, Kapua. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any corrections, additions, amendments, or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Capostro,
Aye.
Board Member Brian Antaya.
Aye.
Board Member Jonathan Kanashiro,
I,
and Chair Nalek Anthony.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 4 ayes.
Thank you. Please note for the record. Okay, stay right there. This is item number 5 on our action agenda today. Adoption of resolution number 982, 2024, amending water system revenue bonds, bond resolution number 717, 2001. Chair recognizes Kalika Lumpy.
Aloha, Board Chair and members, Kalika Lumpke, Assistant Waterworks Controller. We recommend adoption of resolution number 982, 2024, amending water system revenue bonds, bond resolution number 717, 2021, adopted on April 26, 2001, which authorizes and provides for the issuance of revenue bonds of the Board of Water Supply. Resolution number 717 set forth covenants for the establishment, maintenance, revision, and collection of charges and rates, and the collection and disbursement of revenues, created and established certain funds and accounts, and set forth the limitations or conditions upon issuance of additional bonds. It is necessary and desirable that section 1.01 of the resolution be amended to A, provide for certain flexibility in terms of the treatment of certain revenues received, and B, provide certain flexibility in the choice of rating agencies and their thresholds for investments. The resolution amendments include changing the definition of revenues to include the proceeds from legal settlements and adding Kroll to the definition of rating agencies. The amendments will become effective upon the board's receipt of consent of the holders of not less than a majority of the bonds then outstanding. Be happy to take any questions about this resolution.
Members, any questions? If I could just ask for the clarity, I think what we're doing here is in that, like, I think the second to the last sentence of that resolution, we're changing the definition of revenues to include proceeds from legal settlements, because there may not be lawsuits in and around any number of things that could bring in dollars, and so we're going to add that to the revenue file, and then we want to add Kroll as one of our rating agencies. Is that right?
Yeah, the intent is not to deviate from our current rating agencies, but it's just more, a lot of these revisions are more for flexibility.
Okay.
And this actual resolution, along with the revisions, was recommended and drafted by our bond counsel, ORIC. So just.
Yeah, you're correct, Chair, too. It acknowledges that we could get revenues from legal settlements in the future. So that's an acknowledgement to our bondholders.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank
Okay,
you.
it's like one other way in which we collect dollars.
Yes.
Got it. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
so
Thank you, John. Any second?
Second?
Thank you, Brian. To moved and seconded, are there any corrections, additions, amendments, or discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, roll call vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Capozzo,
Aye.
Board Member Brian Ataya,
Aye.
Board Member Jonathan Kanashiro.
Aye.
And Chair Nalek Anthony.
Aye.
Chair motion passes with 4 ayes.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Kaliko's been doing a good job.
Awesome. And he has a good 6-inch shirt. Moving on to items for information, update on the Board of Water Supply's response to potential impacts of the Red Hill field contamination. Chair recognizes Joyce Lynn. Hello.
Hello, board member, board chair and board members. This is the February 2024 Red Hill update. At the last board meeting, I did mention that we sent an invitation to the Department of Health and the Environmental Protection Agency, inviting them to be in person today to our board meeting. Unfortunately, the regulators declined, noting that there are other public engagement opportunities that they could provide Red Hill updates, such as the Fuel Tank Advisory Committee meeting that is scheduled for March 7th. In a response, Manager Lau sent a follow-up letter to the Department of Health and EPA, encouraging them to attend our future board meetings. We sent them a board calendar for the remainder of the year. So we'll keep the board and the public updated as we hear feedbacks from them. So resuming our regular reporting this past month, we had the following notable events and engagements. The construction of our monitoring well at Site H began on January 31st, and we held a press conference on February 7th to inform the public. This monitoring well is located in the Halava area right next to Red Hill and is anticipated to take about 6 months to complete pending drilling conditions. In the past month, Manager Lau and our staff has also met with various Department of Defense representatives, such as the Honorable Brennan Owen, who is the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Energy, Installation, and Environment, Mr. Ron Tickle, and his staff, Mr. Randy Turner. We also met with Vice Admiral Scott Gray, who is the Commander of Navy Installations. And lastly, we also met with Ms. Martha Guzman from EPA Region 9. A lot of the discussions focused on the defueling and plans for closure, as well as remediation efforts. This is the residual fuel tracker from the Joint Task Force Red Hill. There has been an update since this iteration dashboard. As of last week, Friday, the Joint Task Force has removed approximately 59.5 out of 60,000 gallons. So they're almost complete with removing all the residual fuel. So they are in a way ahead of schedule. Once the defueling of the residual fuel completes, the Joint Task Force will stand down and the leading command will be transferred over to the Navy Closure Task Force. And on February 7th, the Navy held a transition open house at the Ke'ihi Lagoon. The Navy's Closure Task Force will be overseeing the removal of the sludge and residual fuel by deconstructive means. The sludge will be contained in drums and shipped off to the continental US for disposal. I was told that the tanks will be cleaned by pressure washing and also possibly with a cleaning solution such as Simple Green. I was also told that the wash water will be contained and be disposed of at an appropriate landfill on island. In the coming months, we look forward to new updates at the Fuel Tank Advisory meeting. I will also keep this board updated as we hear back from the regulators, the DOH and EPA, to see if they will be open to attending our board meeting in person sometime this year. This concludes my update, and I'll be available for any questions. Thank you.
Board members, questions, or any other comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Joyce for putting this together. The meetings with Owens, Pickle, Gray, and Guzman also centered around the detections of TPH in the water system of Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. And these meetings occurred in about a 1 week period. Just before the CRI meeting, which I attended, I happened to attend the Community Representation Initiative meeting, which was held at Olelo's facilities. I'll tell you, it was freezing cold. I never been that cold in Hawaii for a long time. But I thought the Community Representation Initiative members conducted an excellent meeting. It was very informative. Good discussions with the Navy, the EPA, and the Department of Health. And I hope that the EPA continues this effort of having the CRI meet on a regular basis. And I hope that the Navy, the EPA, and the Department of Health continue to attend those meetings in person. Thank you.
I know that there's a number of people here today who are inquiring about some of this documented increases in TPH in the Red Hill system, which is operated by the Navy and not by the Board of Water Supply. But Ernie, maybe in meeting with some of these folks, if meeting with some of these folks, can you maybe give us an update as to where some of this is at and the level of scrutiny that it's been under, and you had mentioned there are a number of people here specifically for that. So where, I don't need you to speak for them, but what is your update in terms of how you understand the situation?
So there seems to be almost like 3 different investigations that are cooperating, yet I think being conducted a little bit semi-independently. One is the Navy or the Department of Defense convened a swarm team of different experts in this area from across the Department of Defense, and that swarm team of around 20 or so members have been meeting and here at Joint Base trying to figure out where this is coming from. When I met with Vice Admiral Gray, who is the commander of Naval Installations Command globally, he indicated that there might be a dozen or so different possibilities that the swarm team is looking into. And he mentioned that one of them was the influence of chlorinated water samples on the test results. I haven't seen any data yet or information from them that would substantiate any of these dozen or so different reasons. But I look forward to seeing that. I just sent a request to the EPA and Department of Health also to get regular updates on how their investigations are progressing. And the reason is that Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, although owned and operated by the Navy, I'm very interested in learning what they're experiencing after exposure to fuel contamination back in 2021 and what they're dealing with and where it might be in their water system. And seems to be kind of coming back or maybe never left, and they're still getting low-level detections. Because it has been suggested that we turn on Halava shaft in the past or recently until contamination got into Halava shaft, and then we could qualify for some federal funds to install treatment systems. And I don't buy that, but I also want to understand what the Navy's water system is experiencing, because it's something we want to avoid ourselves.
Yep, wholeheartedly agree. I did want to open it up for discussion with the rest of the board members. So Brian and Kapua, do you folks have any questions or comments?
I do. I have a couple questions, and I don't know whether this is for Joyce or for Ernie, but a couple different. Well, and I guess first I'd start though by thanking Ernie and Erwin, and our fabulous staff. I am continually mortified by the condition Joint case for Harbor, and I'm grateful for the leadership that you folks have showed in shutting down Halava early on so that we're not in the same situation as far as risking contamination into our water supply system. So thank you for that. I understand that there may have been concerns about that, but I agree that it was the right decision, and I'm grateful, especially now as we're getting more information over the long term. Second, I had a question, and I don't know whether this is for Ernie or Joyce, but whoever. I am concerned a bit about the wash water and the use of simple green in the tanks. As we have known for many years, the tanks are leaky. And I understand that earlier on there was concern about the increase of I guess free product dripping from the Vadel zone, and some discussion around whether or not that may have been exacerbated by the use of cleaning products when there was the initial leak. And so I'm just wondering to what degree that's been considered, and whether we and I understand that the wash water will be taken out, but even if we're washing the inside of the tanks with this product, there's possibility of leaking, and I'm wondering whether that will create more issues, especially within the Vadel zone. So I don't know who that's for, Joyce.
I can answer that. Thank you. Kapoa. So I noticed in reading Navy responses to questions from the regulators, and I saw that part of the closure process, and right now there's 14 tanks that need to be cleaned out that contain fuel. So that 104 million gallons at Red Hill prior to defueling, which is not complete, was actually stored in about 14 tanks. So they have to clean those tanks. And it looks like the process that at least I saw in that document was they would empty the tanks. I mean, they would have to ventilate it first to make it safe for workers to go into the tanks, physically into the tank. And then they were going to pressure wash each of the tanks with a mixture of water and simple green. And you're right, that was the thing that I think the regulators and ourselves were asking of the Navy back in May of 2021. Did they clean up the lower access tunnel by the tank farm with soap or simple green and water? Because the fuel broke a pipe in that lower tunnel, it would have sprayed everywhere under pressure. So I pointed this out to the Navy now recently multiple times. Just don't think that you can pressure wash those tanks and treat that wash water or that wastewater, just let it leak into the environment, because it'll contain simple green, which is like a soap, and loosen if it seeps out into the environment, could loosen any fuel that's hung up in that Vadel zone, the unsaturated zone between the bottoms of the tanks and the top of the water table. And that's a lot of older fuels, perhaps maybe 2 million gallons of past releases, and actually mobilize that to get into the groundwater faster and spread across the valley. So I think they get the message, or they got the message, but I'll continue to stress that point, that they need to treat that very carefully so that wash water is not let out into the environment in the area of the fuel tanks.
Thank you, Ernie. That's precisely my concern. But I guess my concern is also not just the release of wash water, but also because we know the tanks leak, that the pressure washing inside of the tanks with the simple green may
Could
result in
release,
leakage. Yeah.
penetrate the steel, quarter-inch steel plate that's rusted, and then some of you get out behind the steel plate and then loosen the fuel that's trapped back there, or get down into the unsaturated rock.
That's exactly what my concern is that we might be, or they might be making the problem worse.
I will convey that to them. They estimate the quantity, at least in that document I saw, that the quantity of this wash water and simple green mixture, along with sludge, and could be something like 500,000 gallons of water needed to clean the 14 tanks.
Right. Well, and that's my concern. It's largely, I mean, I understand we have to do it, but my concern is just the condition of the tanks, given the leaking that's already happened with the fuel inside of the tanks, not including pressure washing from the inside, right? I'm worried that this may cause more harm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Kapoa.
Yeah, I would just echo that. We've had that new anomaly, right? I think it's with like monitoring well 16, where every time it rains hard, now we have a spike in TPH where we're not really thinking that there's a new set of TPH entering the system. It's actually some of that old sludge that may have gotten loosened up with whatever they used to clean that had gone down the drain,
Yeah,
right?
what we saw is that Red Hill Monitor Well 2, which is
Okay.
close to the bottom
Yeah.
of tank 5, the levels never really go down close to, they stay up there, elevated TPH in about 1,000 parts per billion or higher. So they never go down to zero. So that kind of gives us reason to suspect there are deposits of fuel nearby that continues to contaminate the water in that area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe just another comment about the Red Hill water system. You know, Ernie, you had mentioned that you know that there are these anomalies since 2021 that we'd like to understand better. I think you know, in the meetings that you've sat and that we've been in, I've urged those who have, you know, some actual say in this as regulators that we need to get a really honest understanding of what's happening and what worked and what didn't, as a learning exercise, being that this is something that could happen to the rest of us, and to be able to understand, you know, what worked and what didn't, and how long these the TPH persisted is, you know, paramount importance for us, to be able to not only defend against the TPH entering our system, and you know, the board having said we want that number to be zero, not whatever the limit is as set forth by the regulators, but also that we need to understand better just the nature of what worked and what didn't as we go. So yeah, urge the regulators for some transparency as we go.
So Chair, I will continue to push our request with the Department of Health and EPA to come to a board meeting in the future. I think the other question that really I think needs to get answered, or at least needs a open discussion, is, you know, it's the work that the Department of Health, Roger Brewer, has been doing, or the question is, you know, is there a safe level of TPH to be in drinking water that's being used by people? Which is, my concern is, you know, if the folks are unable to explain away the TPH data test results, and it's actually there, then people are being exposed to low levels of TPH in their drinking water. And what is the health effects of that? And that's a question I pose to the EPA and Department of Health.
Right, and if they don't know the answer, if the answer is I don't know, then they should say so.
Right. They need to answer that question, and hopefully at the next FTAC meeting, if the Department of Health and EPA are listening to our board meeting, I'll email them. I think this should be a point of this open discussion at the next FTAC meeting.
I see Kapoor's hand up. Kapoor.
Sorry, last one. I understand that we have people here to testify too, so I will make this short, but I did want to follow up, Ernie, to the degree that, you know, I wanted to follow up on the matter that we were just discussing about the wash water and the simple grade in the tanks, to the degree that they are using, you know, a power washer or something, and they should be able to, they should know exactly how much water is being put in. And if they're taking it out, they should also be able to calculate how much water is being removed. So can you ask them for those calculations? I guess is the one thing. And the second is, are there going to be reports if in using the pressure water, they puncture the tank for something like that? And so, and how would that be reported? And the third thing I'm wondering is, whether in the cleaning, they're going to start in all 14 tanks at once, or whether they're going to start in one, see how it goes, and then kind of move on to other tanks, so that any best practices that might be learned in the course of cleaning the first one, hopefully not tank 2 or whatever, that one that has like super high levels, we can make sure that in going forward, we're using the best information and the best practices to try and maintain the quality of our precious drinking water supply.
Yeah, I can answer the third question. I think at least what I saw in that document was, it looks like they're gonna do 2 tanks at a time. And as opposed to going after 14 or half of the tanks, they're gonna take 2 tanks out at a time. But I also heard something very important that was discussed at the CRI meeting recently from a former fuels commander there at Red Hill. The issue of before the tanks, people can go into the tanks, they have to flush, ventilate it. So they have to basically force air and try to make the atmosphere in the tank safe for workers to go into it. So that ventilation process will release it to the environment, to the outside area. So I think I understand if they do too many tanks at once, the amount of vapors coming out of that emanating from Red Hill and perhaps traveling to neighboring communities might not be a safe thing to do. So maybe that explains the 2 tanks at a time, but the vapors are another risk because there are 14 tanks to be cleaned.
So are they measuring air quality while they're doing that? I mean,
That's what I heard. The Department of Health was going to implement or require air monitoring to ensure the safety of the surrounding communities.
thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a number of people who've been very patient, providing for comment, either written or in person or virtually online. And there've been a handful of people who came in just right under the nose here. So I'm going to try to get this right. If I miss anyone, just raise your hand and yell at me, and we'll get to that. Also, a request, I guess, and you folks have done this before, where Susan and Jamie have kind of paired some of their information together. They've been working together. Susan Piccola Davis is in person today, and then Jamie Simic has asked that she go right after so that they can kind of pair the stuff together. I'm fine with that, and then we'll go back to the in-person testimony for people in waiting in the boardroom, and then we'll go to finish up the remote if there's anyone left online. And so as the formality, Madam Secretary, we have any written testimony for action item, item for information number 1?
Yes, Chair. One more, Chair, sorry, no written testimony.
Okay. We have stuff that's been submitted along.
With like people.
Yeah, with people in person, yeah. Okay, and that's been disseminated. I have a stack of that stuff. And then so Kim, we have a list of people who are in-house today. It looks like there's 4. Is that right? Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna start with Susan Piccola Davis, who's here in person with us. And then we'll follow up after that with Jamie Simic, who's online.
Okay, I sent in the 18 pages and the first 2 pages kind of going to guide us through it.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming.
After that talk that y'all were doing, I thought, well, if I went to my doctor and my doctor told me that my healthy weight for my height and age is 145, and the next visit I weigh in at 146. Am I unhealthy? It's like the comparison of 266 for the TPH. I thought that was going to be easy. Obviously not. Okay. So, and I also gave you a table of contents. And we're just going to work through the slides at the pages as I go through the first 2 pages of information. So I've done previously, I used the Navy Safe Water site to extract their data to put in a visually acceptable format. This time I set my parameters for December of 23 to January of 24. Detections of petroleum, hydrocarbons, diesel, and petroleum, hydrocarbons, oil, with the total petroleum hydrocarbons being TPH. So this presentation will demonstrate all TPH during this 1 month time level. These are not low levels of petroleum hydrocarbons, but they do represent a pattern. And this 1 month period had 45 detections. So right after this page, because I don't have a clicker, on page 6, you're going to see the clusters around the dates. And the reason it's important is because sometimes you have to ask the question, what's happening? But you don't know how to look at what's happening until you start messing around with the data and kind of like slicing it. So this one I did by date, and you can see that there's clusters around the 14th and 15th. So you go, well, what's happening? Or between the January 8th to the 12th, or end of the month. And then you can see that the highest level of TPH was 226.9. But the water's safe to drink. Then the next one is by addresses. And the bold red print just indicates these numbers that were still safe to drink. And I put them all in red because they're safe to drink. And I'm being sarcastic, guys. So those are the 45 points that were detected. Now, the next part, I go into my areas of concern. So I kind of decided that on page 9, what would concern us the most? Children, keiki. So you can see the list of what keiki areas came up in these 45 data points. And you see child development centers, you got a church, you got the academy, school age center. I'm not going to read them all to you. But then when you go to the next page 10, these are the same locations by date. So on the 10th and 11th, you can see the high detections. Now remember, this is diesel plus oil. It's not just diesel. And you see 176.5. And that was at the Hickam West Child Development Center. 162 was at the same place. 158 was at Catlin School Age Center. And 152, the same, Catlin. Now, again, by child location, only I just said it, right? But by each location, you can see the TPH numbers. So I chose to do it by date and by location of kids. So the 1 month period of January through February, oh wait, what page am I on? 14. I'm going to the statistics now. Okay. Because my summary kind of says a lot. So on page 15, you're going to see the data points or the detections, and the lowest was 106.2 and the highest was 226.9. So the reason why I do the mean, median, mode is because that gives you an idea of where to expect the detections. Like, we're not going to always see 106 and we're not going to always see 229, but there's going to be clusters around that median. Okay, and then again, the same thing with the histogram. It's showing you that the ranges are going to be between 134.2 and 190.2. And the reason I say that is because these three columns represent where the most of the 45 data points fell. So the expectation or the prediction in data is that it's going to go up. And so that's why I use data. I use data because it's going to give me predictability, not necessarily reliability, because we can't rely on anything that they're doing. But the last page is the one that was interesting, and that's Wyava Shaft. So Wyava Shaft on January 12th had 89.3. And I guess if there are any questions, I'm available. I'm really organized, but it doesn't look good.
No, we all appreciate your organization and bringing this to light. Open it up for any discussion, members, any questions?
Sorry, couple. Thank you, Susan, on this, on page 18, we have a shaft detection. You know, when I saw the Hawaii News Now interview of the Navy engineer from the swarm team, I think he mentioned a couple low-level detections.
He did.
Of the shaft, and you actually show me the data then. Thank you.
Because when he said a couple, they hadn't had the February data up yet, and the newscast was in February. So I'm not sure he was talking about the one in 23. I think he was talking the one in 24. So, you know, the question is, how are you going to get the answers? I asked to be on the swarm team because I think outside of the box. I'm not an engineer, and I think like people that are on the ground to ask the right questions and find out rather than saying it's chlorine. Oh. Any other
Oh,
questions?
you have a question? Comment?
I just wanted to say thank you, Susan, for your continued, your tireless, really, advocacy and work and research. I'm deeply grateful. And I know that so many others in the community are too. So thank you for all of this.
You're welcome.
Can you hold up page 7 for me? Just have a question around that. It's this guy.
Yeah, I know, but I think I just mixed them all up when I was
Okay.
flipping around here.
When you find it, so.
Oh, there. Okay, so this is by address.
By address on the load side, you have 127.1. And it looks like on the high side, this somewhere in there is like 226.9.
Yeah,
So there's some lower ones. There's like a 106 down here. So these are all above 100,
yes,
but under the 266.
yes.
What's the trend line that you have drawn in there? What does that do?
That's just tell you where it's going. It's not going down.
And
So if I go to the February, so if I do February through March, the trend line, we would love to be going this way,
down.
but it's just the predictability right now that based on all the numbers that I put in there, and it does its own thing, it does the trend, it calculates the trend line.
Right.
I don't.
All right. And that's like, so this is all laid out by these addresses, but it's by date.
That one, oh, these are by, these addresses are just by address in alphabetical order. I did that because sometimes if people get a hold of this, they'll be looking for their address. Now, this one here is the dates. And then I gave you, tell me I gave you the spreadsheets. I did? So the spreadsheets, there's one by date and then there's one by address, right?
And so when you're articulating this data from the website, my understanding is that it's kind of an arduous process. You're copying and pasting one by one to get the pieces.
Yeah, it's because of my computer. I would definitely appreciate somebody buying me a new one. But yeah, it's more my computer, because when I worked yours, this one here, it was like boom, 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 boom.
Okay.
And I'm learning more as I go.
Susan, on page 7, these addresses, are they basically in the sequence is it from one side of the system to the other side, or it's random?
No, it's just addresses in alphabetical order.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I just did this differently, didn't I?
Except for the first two, right?
Except for the first two, yeah.
Yeah, except for the first two. I think you start at 10th Street and then it's in alphabetical order, but the first two are, I think, not, at least in the copy I have.
Yeah.
Are you on page 7? Because
Yes, on page
it's
7.
binary numbers, so it'll pick up 2 first. And then it'll find, yeah, see, that's weird. Never mind.
Yeah, I was just looking at the
It could
address.
have been me just doing something weird with my typing hands.
So,
Yeah, we're just trying to make sure I'm understanding the data correctly.
Good.
Thanks so much for this.
so, Ernie, I mean, the parts for billing, we've had this kind of robust discussion about kind of where the line of concern is. And that line is set by the regulator, it's moved around, right? And so if you can remind us, it's at 266 parts per billion now?
Yeah, if we look at the last, which is signed by the regulators. So, they set the environmental action level at 266. They did not have a drinking water standard, or what we call NCL. There was no number. They are talking about an extended monitoring time, but we haven't seen anything.
Okay. And with the EAL 266, if we find something that goes to like, for example, 267, then what happens?
I think it triggers some kind of action. I don't remember what the LTM said was the action, or they might be, and I'm kind of speculating, could be maybe flushing or providing alternative water. I don't know. But it didn't look like in the LTM that there was a health-based standard, just that EAL 266. And I think looking back at the Civil Beat article, that is a drinking water standard.
It's just
an action number.
Action number. Okay.
But what is interesting is how it's being portrayed. That the water meets all drinking water standards. I guess it meets all drinking water standards for which there is a standard, but there's nothing for TPH, total petroleum hydrocarbons, which is a mixture.
Right. So number of analytes to get us to.
Yeah, I think they're talking about maybe what EPA and Department of Health regulate currently on an individual constituent or chemical basis.
Kapua, I wanted to give you an idea. If you go to page 13, because I kind of focused on the kids. And if you see page 13, you'll see those in order of zones. Well, somewhat order of zones, but you'll see that most of them are they're kind of all over the place, these school things. And this was only for 1 month. On page 11, it goes in kind of like in order. I don't know how I did this. My brain was frying, I guess. But we had D2, D3, F2, A3 is Iroquois Point. And then H1, that is a piece of AMR. So D3 and D2 are Hickam. And that's where the last presentation last month, where we found almost all of the, a large amount of detections. Any other questions? Any other thing you want me to do with the data?
No, thank you.
Email it.
Super thankful for that. What I would just leave everyone with is, yeah, just concerning trend lines and whereas this is not we're not the regulator, this is not our water system to manage.
Right.
Anxiously awaiting just more data on kind of what's happening, just to better understand the nature of this ongoing crisis.
Well, you can only get what you can get from them. And what I do is I just go to the website and get what I know I can find. That's the only place I can get my data. So that's the only place to go. Do you have any questions?
Well, I was gonna ask, like for hiccups, for example, on page 13,
13?
there's, I see four data points in Hiccup West.
Uh-huh.
On January 10th, 2024. That's, so there are 4 samples taken at different areas.
That I can't find out. So it would be good if like they took a sample from a socket, a faucet, and then maybe a bib hose or something like that. But they don't tell us.
Okay, but that's I was gonna ask you why you think that there's a deviation in concentration of.
Because they're flushing.
Yeah, but if it's at the same date, right, it must be a different location or
Which one are you looking at?
any of these, I mean, Hiccup West CDC, for example.
Because you can see, like Hickam Elementary. And I put red on these tests. So N4 came out at 68.7. N5 came out at 63.5. Well, okay, what made it go lower? Flushing, maybe. That's the only thing I think that they're doing is they're going out there and flushing people that are calling in their complaints. But that's a good question.
Yeah.
Because we haven't figured out yet. I mean, we don't have answers. We only have speculations that after they took the first test, they did something, then they take the second test and it's lower. But it's not significantly lower. It's just 2 or 3 points, maybe 4.
And that's within the range of the accuracy of the test, right? At that scale, right? Parts per billion.
50 is the lowest.
But just like in terms of like the whatever margin of error, right? I'm not the wildest.
But Susan, they're taking a sample, but do they take the first draw without flushing?
We don't know any of that, right?
Do they
It's all
flush for a
secret.
while and then sample?
We don't know. Maybe they use Simple Green. That was a joke.
Being facetious.
Yeah, so, I mean, we don't have the answers, but the most important thing is to ask the questions. That's more important.
And on that note, I have another question for Susan. So I really appreciate you bringing this info to our attention. I think as Chair Anthony has pointed out, this is not our system. We are not regulators. And so I'm wondering, how are you sharing this information with the larger community and the people who are drinking this water and who are affected by it?
They can watch the board meeting.
Okay.
Oh, the CRI meeting.
Well, the CRI meeting, I just passed the stuff around. They only got to touch it. They didn't get a packet, okay? And it was collected right at the end. It's not for me. It's not for me to do it, right? This is why I'm here, because this is the place that I felt the safest.
Right.
And I felt like if I got questions, it wouldn't be so bad if I said I didn't know, you know? I only know what I know, that's all.
Well,
So-
and I want to be clear too. I really appreciate you doing this. I'm just wondering, to me, this is very important, and I'm grateful for the time and effort that you're putting into, pouring through things and putting it together. And so I'm just, in addition to watching this, I'm wondering what additional opportunities there are for folks who are most directly affected. But the bottom line is really thank you, Susan, for.
Well, the FTAC, if I decide to, it just depends. Like I said, this is the forum that I trust.
Thank you. Again, before I would add that I've gotten a number of comments that this is the only cyclical online forum talking about water in Red Hill that's that people are comfortable coming to. And so whereas it's not perfect, we're not the regular, this isn't even our water system. These I think are important questions for all of us who are people who drink water on Oahu to contemplate and think about, especially with the implications of how close our wells are to their wells. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's not
So
perfect.
don't open Halava yet.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Yeah. So we're gonna go a little bit out of order. Michelle, if you could let Jamie Simic, who hopefully is online through.
Okay, she's joining now, Chair.
Thank you. Hello, Jamie, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going behind Susan. We've been working together on educating the public on how severe the contamination is with the Navy's water line and affecting the children. We bring this to you also due to the fact that these children are being exposed 24/7, and some of these detections are being detected by the stadium, by Pearl City Elementary, right outside of Navy housing, that the military is going there and detecting. Also, we need to learn from the mistakes of 2014, when in July 16th, 2014, Steve Linder, the EPA storage tanks program manager, it said himself that once it hits underneath the bedrock and gets into the soil and further down, a cleanup of this contamination is going to be very difficult. It was reported in 2017 or in 2014, all but one of the tanks had fuel already underneath the concrete encasing, and that there were 17 pinholes discovered in just one of the tanks. In 2021, I was given information due to somebody close to me at the time working the remediation that they also found pinholes at that time. We know that they were not maintaining the tanks. We also know from 2014 that the military chose not to do the double encasing, and that there was issues of it moving further. There's also been other whistleblowers that have reported that it takes 6 years it hits that soil for the contamination to move. This has been going on continuously. I have had reports outside of the Navy's water line from the beginning. I know that it's a hard thing to hear, but it's a true thing to hear. The Navy keeps saying that the water is safe at 88 parts per billion that they're detecting at certain schools for these children. It's not safe. It wasn't safe in 2014 when me and my children, along with many others, fell severely ill. I'll start off by showing you. We'll just take a little tour. This is Iroquois Point. This is Iroquois Elementary. And then we also have the CDC Center, the preschool on Iroquois. And then we come up here, and this is right. Sorry, I have a blur on my phone for the outside, but this will also show what I'm discussing. The stadium's right here. We have another detection right over here, which is close by Pearl City Elementary. When you move further onto the Navy's water line on base, this is over in Catlin Park. We have detections up here. This is all military housing. There's also detections in this area that I have not mapped yet. I will map later on, most likely for the FTAC. Then you move into, sorry, gotta find that sweet spot. You move into Hickam. And a lot of the areas that we testified on in January, it's all in the same locations. And these are higher than what was detected in November of 2023. And then you move over into the real sweet spot, Catlin Park, Hallie Nakoa, right where me and my children used to live, and you see the numerous high detections, and it's all in the same areas. It's right across the airfield. We also had a detection in AMR that I did not map. There is more going on than just this affecting the Navy line. These tanks were neglected for decades. We have history of it. We have news reports of it. We have data. The Navy was given $60 million in 2014 in order to do 2-year long-term monitoring. And they were also supposed to do a advanced look detection study and a secondary containment study. Has anybody seen those reports? Has anybody followed up with those? Ernie, I know you were sounding the alarms back then and you were following it closely then. If in 2014, we had all but one of the tanks with fuel stains in the concrete and underneath, isn't it safe to say that those others have pinhole leaks, that they opted not to use that $60 million to get those tanks up to industry code with the double layer of protection? And now we're facing the consequences of it. We come to you guys because you're listening, you're digging, you're following, and you're truly trying to make change. We know you're not the regulators, but you guys don't want to be walking where we're walking, me and my family and thousands of others that continue to live in this contamination and then continue to send their children to school. And these children are getting exposed 24/7. 24/7. And that will go for the same for our local keiki as well. So I appreciate you guys for everything you're doing. And this is why we work so hard. It's going to take all of us coming together, not just the regulators. The regulators, the EPA, and the DOH have had a long time, and the Navy, to do the right thing and to make the necessary changes that need to happen in order to stop our families from getting sick.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, Jake.
And thank you for your continued work.
Thank you. You guys have a blessed day.
You as well. Just members, any questions?
I just want to say that this is Ernie. I just appreciate, Jamie, you following this from 2014. And I remember Steve Libner too. And I don't believe they actually approved the final solutions for double walling. They listed a whole bunch of different options to try to keep the facility operating. And I think the Navy's recommendation was the cheapest option, which is what they were already doing: clean, inspect, and patch. And that's all.
And we know that the fuel eats the metal.
Yeah, fuel can attack the corrode the metal, but fuel is leaking out through steel plate liner and the welds. And we don't even know how much leaked out of the pipelines connecting the tanks to Pearl Harbor. Well, what I have asked the military and have sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense. Now that this facility is actually almost completely defueled, not completely though, and is destined for closure, that there's no reason for redacting or holding back any information about the full life history of this facility and what they have experienced in terms of leaks and spills and what they have stored in that facility. They need to just come clean and share that with us.
Yeah, because it's not just jet fuel. And I've said that since 2021 when I was going live and showing the chemicals in my house. Unfortunately, we are highly sensitive. And I was saying back then, acetone, ether, lead, mercury, I can smell and taste the different chemicals. And other families now that have been there 6 months, a year, they're getting hypersensitive to it as well, because these standards are just way too high. And we deserve to know. And if we're almost completely defueled and we're still having these high spikes up into the 200s and we're telling families that the water is safe, it's not. It's not. It wasn't safe at 50 parts per billion. I almost lost my life in 2014. I almost lost my daughter. This has been going on for decades before 2014. And I don't want to see any more families struggling, and I don't want to see the damage to Oahu. And we need to be looking at the remediation of the soil. We need to be looking at the remediation of what is actually going on in the mountains, because if there's been those pinholes, and they use the terminology, and I was explained that those pinholes are actually like the size of a quarter or a $50. And so you imagine that steadily leaking into the environment, and it takes 6 years for it to move. I mean, I can show you me and my children's labs. It's not just JP8 and JP5 that we've been exposed to. There's other chemicals that they've been storing up there that unfortunately my children were exposed at birth, and it's affected us all, and it's going to stay with us for a lifetime, and it's going to take decades to clean this up. So until we start truly speaking on what is going on up there and what is continuing to happen, we're not going to get any change, and it's going to take even longer. We need to change course at some point. And I appreciate you guys. I really do, from the bottom of my heart.
I'll Jamie.
All right. Members, any other questions, comments? Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. God bless.
God bless.
We're going to move back to in-person testimony. Second person I have is Susan Gorman-Chang. Hello.
Yes, Susan Gorman-Chang, thank you for allowing me to testify, and thank the Board of Water for all that you continue to do. I mean, just for years and years, I really appreciate it. I'm really disappointed to see that the EPA and the Department of Health aren't here. And they said there are other public engagement opportunities. I want to say in this continuing catastrophe, there's no such thing as too much public engagement. They have failed us again and again, and I'm just really disappointed that they're not here. I submitted a written testimony, and which you have, and I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the Department of Health's own report, which is called Evaluations of Environmental Hazards at Sites with Contaminated Soil and Groundwater. In their own report, Department of Health says, the environmental action levels presented in this document and the accompanying text are specifically not intended to serve as a standalone decision-making tool. Yet that is exactly what the Department of Health is doing. They're using this 266 figure and saying, you know, anything under that, the water is safe. EALs, as Ernie pointed out, they're environmental action levels. They're not talking about health. They're talking about what to do in the environment if the levels are above a certain amount. But it's being miscommunicated to the public, and the Navy is being enabled to use that to say that the water is safe when it isn't. I would like to see, you know, the DOH just stop using these EALs as a measure of safety of the water. You know, they're artificial thresholds and they have no health impacts. And it has indeed resulted in, quote, misinterpretation and misuse of this information, which is another quote from the Department of Health's own report that urged themselves and others not to misuse the EALs. I would love to see a policy that states there's no safe level of TPH, jet fuel, gasoline, diesel, antifreeze, and other chemicals in our water. That it's not safe for human consumption, pet consumption, you know, for growing our food. And if that's not possible, I would love to see at least the EALs go back to 100 parts. The measurement which human beings can smell and taste at least some of the contaminants. At our last CRI meeting, Vice Admiral Scott Gray said he would not drink water with a sheen on it. Let me repeat that. Vice Admiral Scott Gray said he would not drink water with a sheen on it. We must not normalize smelling, tasting, and consuming contaminants and chemicals in our drinking water. It's not normal. We shouldn't allow them to gaslight us and tell us that it is. And then lastly, Karine from the EPA, again at the last CRI meeting, said that the EPA does not regulate TPH. What they do, as Ernie said, was they take individual chemicals that they do regulate and they look at those individual levels. They don't put it all together. Like a little bit of this poison is okay. Oh, plus a little bit of this poison, well, that taken alone is okay. A little bit of this poison, that's not the way human health works. I mean, a little bit of simple green, a little bit of mercury, a little bit of lead, a little bit of TPH, a little bit of antifreeze. This is poison. And you can't take them in separate components and say each one is safe. So that's all I have, and thank you for allowing me to testify. And again, thank you all for doing what you do. I appreciate it. You are doing the work of the regulators, I feel like. And also Susan Picola Davis is doing the analysis that the regulators of the Department of Health, that the EPA, and that the Navy can and should be doing themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Thanks for your time today. Next up, Chair recognizes Helani Sonodopale. Aloha.
Okay. I submitted my testimony in writing, but I do have a few errors on there. Kalamai. I know that the EALs are 266. And I have some grammatical, so I'm going to resubmit that. Okay, I'm going to start again. Anoa'i Chair Anthony, Vice Chair Sproat, and members of the board. Kalahui, Hawaii is concerned with the continued reports of water contamination, related health issues, and the lack of access to clean water for families, both military and non-military, on the Navy water distribution lines. At the last Red Hill Community Representation Initiative meeting, the Environmental Protection Agency shared that there was an uptick in few TPH detections and around Pearl Harbor since June of 2023. But because they are still below the Department of Health's environmental action levels of 266 for TPH, no action is being taken. Yet families are still getting sick, and what's more, as new families are moving into homes that were directly affected by the 2021 Red Hill spill, they're not being informed of possible issues with their drinking water. And then we also have that issue where people don't know if they are on or off the Navy water distribution system. In a memo dated July 19, 2018, the Board of Water Supply urged the Department of Health to reconsider and reinstate the 100 parts per billion and 160 parts per billion EAL values that were in place in the early part of 2017, but to no avail. The Red Hill CRI committee has met with representatives from the Department of Health and asked that the EALs be reduced to zero. We hope that the Board of Water Supply will continue to pressure the Department of Health to reinstate safer EAL values, especially since families are still getting sick and there are still detections of TPH. The US Navy is using these high EALs set by the DOH to do nothing, to say that the water is safe, quote unquote. They are still not reporting all findings. They are still not providing clean water to families on their own water distribution system. And they still won't change the water pipes and the hot water heaters that probably have residual fuel from the 2021 spill. So that's all very problematic, and it will bite you folks in the butts when the US military spills fuel in our wells, in the Board of Water Supply wells. They are not safe drinking levels. Kalahui, Hawaii is also concerned with the water rate increase for residents that was set to begin this month. The US Navy and the Department of Defense negligence caused 3 of Oahu's wells to be shut down and nearly 100,000 families to be poisoned. We appreciate the Board of Water Supply filing claims against the U.S. Navy under the Federal Tort Claims Act to recover costs associated with the Red Hill drinking water contamination crisis. But we would like to know if these claims are settled and the Board of Water Supply does get reimbursed for Red Hill related costs, would residents get reimbursed for the rate hikes we are experiencing now? And this has been coming up over and over at the CRI meetings, and it has been coming up over and over in my neighborhood board meetings in East Oahu. I want to mahalo all of you for your continued work to keep our water clean. Aloha.
Thank you.
Members, any comments or questions? Maybe just, if I could just make a comment, Helani, thank you for making time to come in person today. I know you have a busy schedule and come out from West Side. The part in here about the EAL values, and it was brought up in the testimony before as well with Susan. You know, we also take issue with these EALs and where they were set in the past and where they are set now, and we want to recognize that the amount of data that exists with respect to whether or not or what value of TPH or the specific analytes that make up that family of compounds is safe or not. Nobody knows. No one knows, right? And they don't know because TPH is not supposed to be in the drinking water.
Yeah.
They don't know. And so what I've urged, and I've heard Ernie urge it as well, is that if they don't know, they should say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It comes down to a man named Brewer.
Right.
And that's what we've found out from our meeting with the Environmental Protection Agency, with the Department of Health, that he set the limit. And we have yet to get a straight answer. It is not based on health standards, and that's made clear on the Department of Health's own website. When you read through the document of how they come up with the EALs, it's not based on health standards. It's
Right.
based on risk standards. What's risk?
Yeah, there's no data around it to draw the number, except for taste and odor that was at around 100 or 91 or somewhere in that range. And that our view is that if we know that there was contamination and we know that people got sick in 21, that we should just have a higher standard for ourselves in terms of just moving forward with caution and saying something. And if you don't know, if the answer is we don't know, then someone needs to say it. We don't know.
Yeah. And I would ask that the Board of Water Supply does not let up on keeping the pressure on, because you have leverage here that we as the community don't, and continue to ask the questions and don't let it up. I mean, I know you went back and forth, Ernie, right, with them, and I think we need to continue putting that pressure on them, because the Navy's excuse for everything is it's still below the EALs that is set by the Department of Health.
Yeah, I would just add that the reason why we continue to do this is because of the stakes. The stakes are so much higher for the Board of Water Supply because of the number of people that we serve, and that, like, and gets to slide like number 3 of his PowerPoint, and he talks about this integrated water system from Pro City all the way to Hawaii Kai. Like, that's great because we can move water around the island unless something gets into it, and then all that moves around the island as well. And so stakes are much higher. There are more people on the system. It's more integrated, and so therefore we have to be the sentinels for this water supply as we persist. And that means that the discussion about understanding what happened in the Pearl Harbor system is important to us, but also that we're clear as to where these fuels may or may not be going. And it's
don't reopen the Halawa well, please.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
If I could just say,
Sure.
Helani, thank Mahalo for sharing your mana'o, even about our water rates. Well, we will take a hard look at, once we get the first, hopefully hundreds of millions of dollars from the Navy or more. We asked for 1.2 billion.
Yeah.
I just want to say too that we would not be at this point with the Navy closing that facility if it wasn't for the community, for your efforts and everybody that came out to share your manao today, because Board of Water Supply by ourselves could not move this mountain.
Yeah.
Together as a community, together we can move the mountains.
Yeah. Thank you, Ernie. You're a great leader for all of us. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Helene.
Next in person, do we have Lacey? Oh, hello. That's right. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, Board of Water Supply. I wish I had new information or, could give my own update, but I really don't. I want to echo my disappointment in Department of Health and EPA. I was hoping to come here today and receive an update in person. I was really hoping something will be done for the 60% of water lines, which I don't, call it what it is. It's the whole water lines, just so happen to be detected in 60%, but whatever. So I wanted just to echo that. I'm disappointed they're not here. I also wanted to thank the Board of Water Supply for taking a preventative stance towards dangers that could happen. I mean, the horror, you're telling us about the Simple Green cleaning the tanks, and I'm just in my mind going into PTSD mode, and I'm thinking, oh God, like, let's not get Simple Green leaking under those tanks and into the water, because I don't want this to happen to anybody else. So thank you for taking a preventative stance with that. The same about the vents. We have asked, where are these vents? Could we notify these people? We were told that, we can't know where the vents are. So I hope somebody knows, and I hope that somebody is notifying those people, because the fumes are just a different pathway of exposure and could have similar health effects. So thank you for trying to prevent harm from being done in the future. I do appreciate that. Another thing I wanted to just talk about is that it was already mentioned that some of the schools on these water lines had detections, and what you don't see is, you see kind of the same people coming in person, but there's always new people being affected by this in ways that we're not thinking about. For instance, I have a friend who's a teacher at one of the civilian schools that is on the water lines, and she told me about one of her students that just came over from Marshall Islands, and we know the heartbreaking history of what happened there. They come over here and are exposed to this and are having health effects living in a neighborhood that is on the Navy water lines, but is in civilian area, and also going to a school on those lines. So these people, they don't have a voice. They're not, they don't have a car. They're not going to drive from over there to show up in person. So I just want to mention that, to speak for them, that there are people being exposed to these safe levels, which we know are not safe. But I just hope we keep them in mind. It's not just military families. I also wanted to touch on the Department of Health EHE guidance, which Susan mentioned, and also the long-term monitoring, which I believe Ernie was talking about that, and how these levels, these EALs are being used to, determine what actions should be taken and when. And I've read these things, and the Department of Health EHE guidance says, when the whole purpose of an EAL is when something's exceeded, it will tell you it's time to take action. But a line down from that, it says one of the actions they can take is no action. Yeah. So why are we playing these games? I'm very disappointed in Department of Health for that whole line. Why even make a document to take no action? It seems it's not right. The long-term monitoring plan, it plays that same stupid game. When there's an exceedance, the first thing they talk about is replacing the fixture. Okay, so there's mercury. Let's just replace the sink. Look, you have a shiny new sink. You're good now. Everyone's good, right? Okay, so I just want to thank the Board of Water Supply for not playing those games. I feel that you're really one of the only entities actually looking for real solutions, looking at the real problems, and not wasting time and money with these games where everything's okay and we're taking actions that really don't do anything. So thank you for not doing that. The whole EALs and safe, calling it safe, I can't believe we're still even having this discussion. If people have been reporting health effects for a long time, and we know those are risk-based, not health-based, and everyone's happy to call it safe, and that line is still going. At the last CRI meeting, we are done, okay? We said, we're not doing this anymore. We're not calling it safe. Change the name of the website. We're not playing this game. And, you know, again, this is just me telling, I know none of this is really your fault or any of that, but just thank you for not playing those games. So thank you. I don't really have any new information, but I just wanted to say thank you for what you have to continue to do to try to find solutions.
If I could just say, Lacey, I just mahalo for also your willingness to serve on the CRI. I see all of you and Susan, Healani, yourself, and I miss anybody who serves on the CRI, but you guys are amazing. Folks are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like we're moving to remote testimony. Last thing that I have for this series is Tara Rojas on Zoom. Michelle, do we have Tara?
Yep, Tara Rojas has joined the meeting and she'd like to testify on this item as well as item number 5 about the groundwater levels.
Aloha, would you like me to do both items at once or just number 1 first and then number 5 come back on?
How much can you do both of them in like 4 minutes?
Oh, okay, sure.
Okay.
Okay, so Tara Rojas, and again, I just wanted to thank you all as well for really standing with the community, hearing our concerns, and then expressing that to the EPA and the Department of Health and the Navy, and also a mahalo nui to the CRI committee as well. You know, we really appreciate, you know, being the voice and really saying what we have in our minds. And so with that, I'm just going to start that my concerns for this number 1 item are basically the DOD leases, and then 2, their gaslighting and lack of action. So as everybody said, you know, how disappointing to not see the EPA and the DOH here at this meeting, because if we can be present and find out when this meeting is and the next one, they have no excuse, you know, they have to be here as well. In any discussion with the water, everybody needs to be together in the same room. And so my comment, testimony, and question to you all would be, number 1, will you, the Board of Water Supply, be there at the BLNR meetings and or CWAR meetings, but specifically BLNR meetings, to testify when the DOD leases are to be up in 2029. And the reason I say this is because we see what's happening with the Navy. We see their gaslighting. We see their lack of action to remediate in the now. At the CRI meeting, it took several direct, you know, adamant comments to the Navy to make sure that one testifier that was being affected and her husband and children were at home, you know, just to get them water, like enough water by that night, to get them to promise that they would get water to that one family that night. It took several like directed comments. So if we can see that with just one family, and then now all these other families still affected, and, you know, just they need to be accountable for their actions with their contaminating our water. So will you be there to testify when these leases are up? Because why? The DoD leases are up in 2029. We see what the Navy is doing in addition to our water supply, we see what they're doing to our kai with the sewage spills, making Pu'ulo, one of our most abundant sites, a Superfund site. And just today, by the way, the written testimony I sent was on behalf of students as well as myself, that a student was just saying now they can smell at Iroquois Point. And I heard today in today's meeting that Iroquois Point with this detection of fuel in the water or chemicals in the water, they're also smell like sewage spills. You can smell it when you drive into Pearl Harbor, military housing. You can smell it there as well now in Iroquois Point area. And so we see what they're doing as well as to our kai, and then we see what the Army is doing, for example, in the legislative session that they reneged on their transfer of Makua Valley, which they're waiting for over 80 years, 80 plus years. They reneged on it, on returning and transitioning the lands out of their hands, back to the state of Hawaii and then the people that originally came out. So why? Because if you read the BLNR chair's testimony, it's because they want to keep their leases. In other words, they want to renew their leases. They actually want to use like new lands, to destroy and desecrate, like as a, as a compromise. But it's just no, we see what the military is doing in addition to the Marines, their shooting base. It's contaminating the kai, again, in that same Kapilina, Iroquois Point, Eva Beach. So the continued contamination, they're not giving up their leases, easily. And so will you be there, Board of Water, to testify in against for their 2029? Because you have to be on the lookout, because they're going to open up to public testimony again on whether they should or not. They already went to the BLNR, the Army, to advocate in behalf of keeping their leases. So that's my really important question to y'all, because the gaslighting, the lack of action that everybody said, that we're at the CRI meetings, we're at all the meetings. And yeah, so just that I wanted to say. I don't know if I'm probably going to answer after. Okay, so my next thing was for number 5 about the groundwater levels. My comment is regarding Honu'uli'uli Ahupua'a. So the allotment that each Ahupua'a has, the limits, because one, it seems that there's not enough coordination in this state of Hawaii, like the city and county, like the system, because you have C1, BLNR, neighborhood boards, we have this HCPA entity, we have legislative meetings, we have county councils, and we have planning commissions meetings. Went them all, and wherever I go, I try to mention about the water. And so, at my particular neighborhood board meeting, it seems like me and Susan, she does testify as one. I super appreciate her being there, that it's at least us two kind of testifying for the water. That one, in Honu'uli'uli Ahupua'a, there are several really big issues. One is the Waikai went through, and I remember at the mayor's town hall, like Ernie had mentioned that you weren't aware of it, how that one got through. But as you see behind me, Ole Honokea, Waifu, this needs to be stopped. This needs to be addressed. In this water crisis, we cannot be using 7 million gallons plus for 50 plus bungalows, plus entertainment, plus aquatic center, plus all of this for entertainment. So we cannot have another water pool 10 minutes away from the first one. Now, HCDA, I want to bring to you all BOW. It seems that they're already going in, like kind of pre-approving, like amending zoning and allowing permits to go through, because their mission is to build. And so HCDA wants to go ahead and allow this, prepping for the second wave pool. So I want to let you all know, BOW, to be aware, because this cannot happen. Why? Because in the same Eva Honu'uli'uli Ahupua'a, for the past 5 or 6 years, suppose it's in the upper, the higher upside. I'm assuming it's you all, the board. I'm not sure if it's you all or administratively in the Board of Water, but at every Eva Beach neighborhood board meeting, I spoke with the rep, and since it was brought up that in Eva Gentry area housing, there's a 15 to 20 million gallon leak per month.
million gallons per month, and it's been happening for the last 5 to 6 years. And they do not know where the leak is because of how that water metering system is in that housing area. And that's just in one area, in addition to all these other, you know, developments that HCDA has in mind. And then they're looking to also make an HCDA for Lahaina as well. So I see the issues with this HCDA. And so basically is our use of water. I saw that in your report, number 5, you're going to present that they're on critical or cautionary level. And then I looked at, and it said like about how the less than normal precipitation. And we were just, if we're still in a drought, so I'll kind of wrap it up here, just in a drought. Yeah, so HCDA really
It's a
needs.
separate water system.
Yeah, HCD needs to be stopped. So all of this needs to be coordinated, take into account. So it's not just one person for speaking, one or two or handful speaking for a whole ahupua'a that isn't really in danger in a water crisis. So mahalo nui for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just need to protect and conserve our water.
Thank you. And I can tell you that we're watching the lease conversation very closely. We appreciate you bringing it up. Mahalo nui. Okay, any other testimony for item for information number 1? Going once, going twice. Okay, thank you everyone for your time today. If it's okay, can we take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Can I get a motion for a 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Motion for a 5-minute break, so moved. Can I get a second? Thank you. 5-minute break, John and Kapul for the first and second. Coming right back. Okay, we're back in regular session. Appreciate everyone's patience for a quick break. This was a couple hours worth of meeting this afternoon. Moving on to item information number 2, financial update for the quarter ended in December 31st, 2023. Chair recognizes Kaliko Lamki. Aloha.
Aloha, board chair and members. I'm here to present the financial update for the quarter ended December 31st, 2023. Kaliko Lamki, Assistant Waterworks Controller. This is for the financial performance for the period July 2023 to December 2023. This slide shows the budget to actual for that same period. Actual revenues at 140.4 million versus budgeted revenues of 132.7 million. Actually doing better than budget. Operating costs are 117.6 million versus budgeted cost of 124.3 million. Doing really good on the operating side as well. And actual net revenue, we're showing 22.8 million versus budgeted net expenditures of 8.4 million. Just basically the difference between the revenue and the costs. These shows our cost drivers year to date. So we're about the halfway point for the fiscal year. 6 months in, you can see the actual columns on the left and the budget. So personnel, actual of 22 million, budget of 26.9. Materials, supplies, and services, 43.9 actual versus 45.3 budget. Equipment, 200,000, budget 100,000. Debt service, 18.5 million versus a budget of 19.4. And lastly, the utilities, actual of 15.8 and a budget of 16.3. This shows our operating budget versus actual. Again, we're about the midway point through the fiscal year. Budgeted expenditures are 124.3 million versus actual expenditures of 117.6 million, with a variance of 6.7 million. You can see below the field operations are 2.8 million under budget. Information technology, 2 million under budget. Capital projects, 2 million under budget, as well as customer care, 720,000 under budget. And just to note, variances may be due to posting timing differences. Next, this pie chart shows the total operating expenditures of 117.6 million. Fixed charges is coming in at 26%. Personnel services, 19. Material supplies and services, 37. Equipment, still at about a 0.2, which is 200,000. And finally, debt service, about 16% of the total operating expenditures. It shows our operating expenditures by category. Again, this is budget versus actual. The budget is the blue shaded bar, and we have the actual under that purple shaded bar. So personnel services, actual below the budget, as well as materials, supplies and services, equipment. You can hardly see it, but it's I think it's about 100,000 over, slightly over. Debt service under budget, as well as fixed charges is slightly above budget. Page 7, those are budgeted operating expenditures for fiscal year 2024. So 6 months in, you see that red line that's kind of crossing over the different months there. That's the expenditure cumulative, that's the actual. And then that kind of like lime green line above that is the actual budgeted expenditure. So you can see we're about 5.41% under for the actual expenditures 6 months into the fiscal year. We have our budgeted operating revenues for fiscal year 2024. So again, that line is kind of crossing over the different months there. Our budgeted revenues on a cumulative basis is that red line. And you can see the actual revenues cumulative is that blue line going across. So we're about 5.84% above budget halfway through our fiscal year. With that, mahalo. This concludes the presentation for the financial update for the quarter ended December 31st. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Members, any questions?
I have a question.
Brian?
You know, for the utilities variance, I know we're under budget, which is great. Is it because of the rates? Has the rate adjusted, or has the usage adjusted?
I could double check on it. I want to say off the top of my head, it's probably the usage, but we can dive deep into that and get you a more definitive answer on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
That's all I have.
Thank you.
I mean, it seems like doing pretty good, but just generally speaking, what's the driver for the variances? I mean, is it just hard to mobilize and do improvements, or not as many main breaks? I think there is one main breaks, right? What's just generally, I mean,
I think just for more on the operating expenditure side, I think a lot of the categories is salaries and wages. So probably due to vacancies, professional services, salaries and wages, other contractual services, other IT, and then again, salaries and wages for customer care. So I think it's the fact that it's under the budget on the expenditure side is probably due to the vacancies. So
the vacancies and not being able to.
It's so very difficult to find people to fill the jobs. So that's been a challenge, especially in certain categories. It's really hard.
And pumping revenues are just higher too, but people are.
Yeah, I think I want to look at the Barry's report on 6, which will look at rainfall over time. And on 5, I'm sorry, status of groundwater levels at index stations. But during periods of dry weather, people use more water. And we had a I think a wetter than expected winter. National Weather Service is predicting a drier winter. We actually had more rain than we had anticipated. So that kind of drove down water use.
Yeah.
But then that would reduce our pumping costs. But then, also less revenue coming in at the same time. So some of it may be weather related.
Yeah.
I thought it was just because Ray tells everybody, no, they cannot have new stuff.
Yeah, when she told them, everybody listens, including myself.
Yeah. Well, just huge appreciation for the added revenue and the savings in costs. I have maybe two comments. Well, one is a question. Right, over the last couple of years, staff has worked really, really hard to control costs in uncertain times, especially as we deliberated this rate increase. And so, even today, we're hearing testimony about the rate increase and also knowing like Ernie doesn't get new green shirts, he's driving a 14-year-old car and the like. And the question is like, how much longer can you keep that up? Like just keeping it, the cut as close as it is. And you don't have to answer now, we can talk about it later, but that's one of the things that I think as we think about, the pivot that's taking place in terms of where we're putting some of our energy and looking for new water versus replacing pipe and the like what do we need to be successful in meeting charter? And then the second is just like, I want to come talk to you sometime in the future, but when we've seen some of the year-over-year projections, this debt service number becomes one of the ones that in maybe not this year and next year and the next is okay. But after that, it starts to, if I recall correctly, it starts to get bigger. And that's something that I just want to have a conversation about to better understand the dynamic of the push and pull, right? We're trying to flatten out how we spend the dollars. And so we get these bonds that then lay this out over years and years, but then at some point we got to pay the bonds. And so that changes the mixture of what we get to do as well. So not for today, but that's something I don't bug you guys about.
That's we can have that discussion in the future to the projections for long-term debt service requirements over time, which is so using the combination of cash to pay for operations, but also pay for part of the capital program, and then also borrowing to spread the costs of the capital program over 30 years, so that ratepayers of today don't all bear the full burden of the costs.
Right.
It's also future customers coming onto the system, but we can do that.
Sure. Yeah. I'm just really curious about the math and like how you guys see it, given there's the interest rate bubbles that have come and gone in the last couple of years, as well as just like when we get back on track to try to meet the 1% of pipe a year. What does that realistically do for us? And are there other ways to get around some of that injection of federal dollars and the like? Yeah.
And on the other side of the coin too is the workforce that we have to actually get the jobs done.
Correct.
It's we are that is a struggle to fill vacancies right now.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Any other questions, comments?
I would like to add some comments, and it's a great report that we have. It's we're taking in more than we budgeted, and we're spending less than we budgeted. My concern is, and it's been a problem for many, many years, and I know it's not just BWS, but it's the ability to not having enough people, right? Not having the teams, not having sufficient human resources to be able to deliver the services and to come into the infrastructure or build and find new water sources. That's kind of the challenge. So it's kind of bittersweet while we enjoy a surplus. The reality is it's because we don't have enough people, and not by choice. So I guess maybe continuing to look into ways where we can invest surpluses towards recruitment, towards retention, towards things like that. And I know it's not an easy answer with collective bargaining, other challenges like that, but I would like to continue, like the agency to continue to look in that direction.
Yes.
Yeah, agree. Agree, yeah, saving the dollars is good, but we still gotta meet charter, which is difficult if we don't have the staff, absolutely. Done.
I'm just wondering with the new rate increases and the reason that's, you know, the minimum day working capital. It'd be kind of great to have like a snapshot of, you know, the next update where we were kind of sitting with that, just because, you know, that was the main reason why or at least that was like the objective of rate increases, or one of the main objectives. So it would be great to kind of know where we are at, you know, at points of time, just to make sure we're working toward that goal.
Yeah, working capital is there for emergencies, times when we have to try to deal with a situation that affects revenue and our ability to serve water.
Just the one number, maybe it's just at that point in time. You know.
Okay, I can add that in as a slide.
Yeah, I mean, and the increase, right, is only taking effect now, so. It's just a couple of months or something,
You know,
Maybe
increase, so.
maybe the next quarterly update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not?
All right,
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yep, moving on to item number 3, Capital Improvement Program Quarterly Update that recognizes Jadine Ursaki. Aloha.
Afternoon, aloha. Chair Anthony and board members, I'm Jadine Urasaki, Acting Program Administrator for the Capital Projects Division. This is the quarterly report on the Capital Improvement Program for all divisions for the quarter ending December 31st, 2023. In the second quarter for fiscal year 24, there were 6 contracts awarded totaling just over $65 million. There was 1 contract completion reported, and these are some of the highlighted summary, and then the next sheet would have the details of those awards. So we have 6 projects, 5 were construction and 1 was professional services. That totaled $65 million. As you can see, the highlighted, the really one that sticks out is the Kailailoa seawater desalination facility at $60 million. So that in turn helped in the next graph, which shows where we are graphically for this fiscal year. So we're at roughly at that 36th percentile because of the Kailailoa $60 million that we awarded and added to this past second quarter. And with that, I'm open to any questions that you may have.
Members, any questions? I just have one.
Okay.
So, can you guys put the PowerPoint back up? Go back to page number 1, the first set of awards. So the ongoing projects, 240, ongoing construction projects, 133. This is like actually to Brian's point earlier. How many staff tracks all of that stuff for you guys?
The tracking of it?
Well, like who's in charge of seeing it move along?
So we have 4 branch heads, 1 in support branch that oversees our facility reservoir drainage projects. We have, so that's the design side. We have another design branch that oversees like the pipeline projects and new facilities. We have another a branch that oversees all of our mechanical, electrical projects in terms of the design projects. And then we have a construction branch that oversees all of the construction projects.
Thank you. Ernie.
I just, that continues to be a challenge, I think, JD, was it 16 engineer vacancies, right?
Yes.
In Capital Projects Division alone.
hoping to fill 2 of those 16 right now
Oh,
as
good.
we're interviewing.
Then it'll be 14. So that'll be an improvement, a challenge. I just also have some sad news to report too. Jadine Urasaki will be leaving the Board of Water Supply in the near future, I think. March 4th, it'll be her last day. I just want to say, folks, you look at the graph, if JD, you bring that back up, I just got to attribute the Jadine's hard work during her, how many? Is it 5 years or?
4 years.
4 years. I was 1 year off, that she's been with the Board of Water Supply to get us on a very disciplined program. We get complaints from our contractors, but it's actually, it's really holding them to the contract that they sign at the time they make the award, get the project. So I just want to thank you for getting the Capital Projects Division under real structured, disciplined approach to delivering projects to get the best value on behalf of our customers. And JD, would you like to say any words?
No, I thank you for all your support that the board gives us and the interactions and conversations that have happened over the past 4 years. Definitely, we need that support. And I know you guys mean well. We're just having such a difficult time just trying to recruit and bring on people. And then also the challenge of retaining them when, you have other competing entities like the Navy that continuously are recruiting and taking people because they can offer more. And again, that's the challenge. And that's the challenge I think that will be there for some time. And so again, we try to look at creative ways. We try to look at what we can do. And again, capital projects and the board itself, I mean, it's a great place to be at. And it's a great place to learn, to work. It has diversity, and it has that community impact. And so we tell that to our younger guys. We continue to tell that to people when we go out there for career fairs, in the hopes that they do come over. But again, we are just challenged like everybody else.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And even though Jadine is going to be leaving soon in the near future, she was out at College of Engineering Career Fair last week, Friday. So thank you, Jadine.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jadine. Thank you for your service.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item number 4, financial statements and supplementary information with independent auditors report fiscal year ended June 30th, 2023. Chair recognizes Don Nakamura and Matthew Oda from Acuity LLP. Aloha, you guys.
Aloha, thank you very much for having us. Good afternoon. I know it's a long meeting so far, so we'll try to keep it short, but present everything that we need to at the same time. Again, I'm Don Nakamura. I'm a partner at Acuity. This is Matthew Oda. He's a senior manager in our audit department. Where did it go? Here it is. Matt will go through the audited financial statements and single audit report before I go through some additional required communications.
So you guys will probably have 2 copies of reports. One is the financial statements, and then one is the single audit or the federal compliance audit report. I was going to go through the financial statements first. It'll be pretty high level because it was a clean audit. There's not a lot to report, which is always good news. So please feel free to stop me if I can cover anything in more detail or if you have any questions. Down here, this is the report of the independent auditors. So this is our audit opinion on the board's fiscal year 2023 financial statements. So what these paragraphs right here are saying basically is that we had a clean or unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is always great news, which is what you want. I'm going to jump ahead to the financial statements themselves. Unfortunately, they don't present prior year too. So I'm just going to cover some of the year-over-year changes. And then if you guys have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Down at the bottom, net position increased by $46 million this year compared to a $31 million increase last year. The larger increase this year was mainly due to investment performance because there was a pretty significant investment loss in 2022, and there was a slightly less big investment loss in 2023. Unrestricted current assets at 6/30/2023, exceeded total current liabilities by about $176 million. Net capital assets increased by approximately $31 million, mainly due to current year construction activity, offset by current year depreciation expense. On the liability side, the net pension liability was $121 million at 6/30/23, which was an increase of about $14 million from prior year end. And then right below it, the net other post-employment benefit liability was about $31 million as of June 30, 2023, which was a decrease of about $12 million from prior year end. Refundable advances right here increased by about $25 million this year. And what that was receipt of the ARPA federal funds that were unspent as of year end. So they get recognized in the financial statements as a liability until they're spent. Notes payable increased by about $12 million. And that was mainly due to new SRF loans this year, offset by capital payments. Did anyone have any questions on the financial statements? It was pretty high level. I was going to go through the footnotes next, but any questions on? Okay, thanks. So moving ahead to the footnotes, just did want to point out one change this year. There was a new accounting pronouncement called GASB, or Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement Number 96. And if you guys recall, last year there was a GASB 87, which put some assets and liabilities into the financial statements related to the entity's leases. So this one is kind of mirrors that one. It requires recognition of assets and liabilities for subscription-based information technology, or IT arrangements. So I mean, the impact wasn't very big because there wasn't a lot. There wasn't material IT arrangements that were capitalized, but there was about a little over $2 million that was recognized in the 2023 financial statements because of this new accounting standard. And then related to that same standard, there's a new accounting policy this year, or footnote this year, footnote 12, related to the board's subscription-based IT arrangements. And this table right here is just showing basically the principal payments and interest payments that are due under these arrangements for the next 5 years. Last thing I wanted to mention, at the very end of the footnotes, risk disclosure in footnote 16 related to the Red Hill fuel storage facility issue. And basically what this is saying is that the situation is still evolving and still ongoing, so we don't know what the ultimate financial impact is, but it is something that could potentially subject the Board of Water Supply to adverse financial impacts. That was all I was planning to cover for the financial statements and footnotes. Did anyone have any questions or anything I can cover in more detail? No? Okay, thank you. If not, I'm just gonna go through the second report real quickly. So as I mentioned earlier, this one is the single audit, which again is a compliance audit over Board of Water Supply's expenditures of federal funds. And so this one is required every time an entity expends over a certain dollar threshold of federal. Right. Okay. Fortunately, because we didn't have any findings this year, this report is really I don't have a lot to cover here, except to say that it was a clean audit. So I wasn't planning to jump into it too much unless anyone had any questions or.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. If no questions, I'm going to turn over to Don then to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. This is just our required communications related to our audits. And Matt covers some of them by going through the financial statements. And I know you folks had this earlier, so I'm not going to go through every slide in detail. This slide covers the scope of our services, which is basically our reports, which Matt covered. These are the financial statement and highlights that Matt mentioned. And then I did just want to spend a little time, not too long, on these are additional required communications. And this would be similar to the format of our required communications in prior years. So we have the required communication in the left, it's a tabular format, and in the left column is the matter to be communicated, and in the right column is our response to that. So again, since I know you folks have this ahead of time, I'm not going to go through all of these items, but I did just want to point out certain things. So on the last row of this this slide, there are significant risks of material misstatement that's identified as part of our audit planning. And I know there were some questions prior to a meeting that were raised as far as some of these bullet points. So just to point out, the first two bullet points related to improper revenue recognition due to fraud and management override of controls, those are standard audit risks that are stated as presumptive risks in the auditing standards. So it's not specific to the Board of Water Supply. It was not something that we specifically identified for this audit, but it's just presumptive that those risks exist. So we did include that as audit risks or risks in our plan and perform procedures to address those. And then the third one is improper classification of capital assets, which we also looked at as part of our audit procedures. As we also noted that there were no additional or changes to the significant risks identified during our audit. Significant accounting policy. So the main one to note was the new statement that was implemented, GASB statement number 96, which Matt mentioned, and is included as a disclosure in the notes to the financial statements. I also just wanted to highlight the last row again in this slide as far as the more difficult and subjective subjective judgments and estimates in the financial statements included the allowance for uncollectible receivables, depreciation and useful lives of capital assets, and the calculation of the net pension benefits, net other post-employment benefits, and workers' compensation liabilities, since those items are actuarially determined. And we did note that management's estimates were evaluated and appeared to be reasonable. On this slide, just noting that the summaries of adjusting and classifying journal entries were included in the management representation letter. So there is that summary attached to that if there are any questions related to that. And again, as Matt had noted, there is the disclosure related to the Red Hill bulk fuel storage facility. Let's see. Other than that, there was nothing else. Oh, I'm sorry. There was just, again, pointing out what Matt noted as far as there being no findings in the single audit report. So there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that were reported. And no, we're not aware of any fraud or illegal acts. So that was a good thing. And that was the end of this presentation. You folks have any questions for us?
Members, any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
Okay. Moving on to item for information, number 5, status update of groundwater levels at all index stations. Chair recognizes the just walked in the door, Jerry Usagawa. Your timing is.
Thank you, Chair. My timing. Yeah, we've been working on it, Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't have a cold. But anyway, okay, thank you and good afternoon. We have a reduction in amount of index wells that are in low groundwater from 9 to 7. For the month of January, they're Kaimaki, Moanalua, Rose City, Waipahu, Punaluu, Kaluanui, and Wailua in caution, so we have nothing in alert. The monthly production dropped to 126 million gallons per day. And rainfall, although we had high rainfall in November, December, January was 52% of normal. The 5-month moving average is still under normal, 79%. National Weather Service is still forecasting they're below normal rainfall through June. So we want to make sure that our conservation will ramp up into the summer. Yeah, so you can see the 52% in January, November, December, which is unusual for a strong El Nino year that we have 2 wet months in a row like that. But as National Weather Service said last year, it was a La Nina year where we were forecasting higher rainfalls in the winter months And it was, we had some, but it wasn't as wet. And then the pumpage, or production, down at 126, so starting the year, at least in January, in good shape. And that's my report.
Members, any questions?
Thank you.
Or any concerns that you have, in any of the pumping going by? I see like a couple are in alert, but looks like some of these kind of hang out in there, but do you have anything that you're seeing based on rainfall and based on pumpage?
Yeah, they're right close to those red lines there, so while they're in caution, they're really, they're kind of just out of alert kind of deal.
Yeah.
I'm hoping for more recovery, if we get a little bit more rain. We also checking chlorides too, so those are, stable at this time. But yeah, we certainly need to work with, Kathleen's group on the conservation messaging, keep the demand down as much as we can. And I think we have, some additional rebates that the manager's been, directing us to work on. So, we'll have the tools available. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, Barry, maybe you can talk about the toilet rebate increase.
Oh, yeah, to $100 for the next 3 months. April 18th, yeah, from $40. It's going to high efficiency toilet. And so we're getting the messaging out there, and we also focusing on Y&I, to get the word out there because, disadvantaged community, dry area. But we're just out there too, visiting Kaala Farms and Mohala. We have wrapping up the watershed management plan for Y&I, prepping for the Y&I designation petition. So we got a lot of things going on there, that should help us, help to manage the resources out there. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, right on. Thank you. Yeah, and I did see that rebate in the news, so great job. Thank you. Okay. Last but certainly not least, number 6, water main repair report for January 2024. Chair recognizes.
Sorry, we don't have Brian anymore.
Oh,
He just left, so Moana, I don't know if we can continue on.
Yeah, I actually told Brian he had to leave at 5, and because there's no action to take, you guys can just continue on.
thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks,
that.
Luana.
Okay,
The last item.
Jason,
Okay.
please take no actions in this report, okay? You get us all in trouble.
Okay, the following is the water main repair report for January. January, we had 22 main breaks. 10, I believe, 10 of which were breaks and 12 were leaks. So the 22 breaks brought us to 271 for the year. We're still trending higher than normal, but at least January was below average month. Here are the 22 breaks, mostly on small diameter pipe. Leak detection investigated 68 points of interest and found 57 leaks for a total of, I think that's 528 for the year to date. Of the leaks that were found, 3 were on mains. Okay, so with that, we're up to 51 of the leaks have been found on main lines to date. Okay, that concludes my report. Are there any questions?
Members, almost down to member. So any questions? Very done, Jason. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on the plate? If not, brings us to the end of our regular board agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Second. So we got 2 people. One can move, one can second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. They're adjourned. Thank you so much.